Chapter 621. On the battlefield, the sovereign king waved his hands, and the laws intertwined to form a light shadow. It was very small, only the size of a palm. It was completely black, as if it was made of black jade. It was a sword embryo that was indestructible and could slay demons and immortals. Clang! There was a sword hum as the palm-sized sword embryo shot towards Chu Bei. In an instant, the heavens were vast and boundless as godly King Laws erupted. Destructive aura swept across the heavens and earth. The third sovereign king of Shur attacked as well. He condensed his divine power into a divine spear and shot it towards Chu Bei. Looking at the three godly king attacks coming from different directions, Chu Bei smiled. There was no fear on his face at all. He formed a seal with his right hand, and 3 9-colored Dao flowers appeared. They met the fist mark, sword embryo, and divine spear respectively. Clang! There was a metallic explosion as the sword embryo shattered. Then, the fist mark turned into a rain of light and dissipated. Finally, the divine spear shattered and scattered. Who are you? The 3 sovereigns of Shur country trembled when they felt the terrifying power from the 9-colored Dao flowers. This was especially so for the 2 sovereigns who had not come into contact with Chu Bei's energy. Their eyes were filled with deep shock. What's the point of knowing who I am when you're about to die? Chu Bei glanced at the 3 sovereigns of Shur country and said with a smile, "Rumble." Just as Chu Bei finished speaking, the 3 9-colored Dao flowers had already appeared in front of the 3 sovereigns of Shur country. There was a loud explosion as 3 surges of energy that surpassed the godly king realm turned into an energy storm that swept through the space where the 3 sovereigns of Shur country were. Bam! 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 In an instant, 3 deep explosions reverberated above Shur country's territory and reverberated in every corner of the origin mainland. Whether it was the godly king experts or other experts who were watching the battle, they all stared at the energy storm above Shur country's territory. They were all stunned. They could vaguely see the bodies of the 3 sovereigns of Shur country exploding again and again within the energy storm. Blood splattered everywhere. In just a few breaths of time, within the energy storm, the 3 sovereigns of the Shur kingdom exploded and reassembled 26 times. The experts of Shur nation were numb to this scene. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They could not believe that their supreme ruler would fall into such a predicament one day. No matter who you are, I want you dead. Suddenly, the furious roars of the Shur kingdom's 3 kings filled with monstrous killing intent could be heard from the energy storm. Clang! At this moment, a metallic sound rang out from within the energy storm. It sounded like the roar of a dragon or tiger. The next moment, a long sword cut through the energy storm, and the 3 kings of the Shur kingdom walked out from it. It was a sharp violet sword that was around 7 feet long. It was sharp and dazzling, and there were various strange patterns flickering on the body of the sword. It was a terrifying weapon that left a deep impression in one's mind with a single glance. The sword trembled. Its voice was cold, making one's soul tremble. This was a supreme weapon that transcended the godly king tier. It carried a wave of killing intent that went against the auspiciousness of the immortal Tao. It spread outwards, turning into a divine killing weapon, held in the hands of a Shur country monarch. Wong. Apart from the violet sword, there was also a green round mirror that appeared in the sky. In the round mirror, there were magnificent mountains and rivers. Great stars rotated, presenting a complete great world that was incomparably real. It stood quietly in front of another Shur country's 3 kings, but there was a terrifying aura that seemed to suppress the universe. Clang! Another metallic sound rang out. A longbow appeared in the hands of the last Shur country monarch. Thousands of brilliant lights flowed around the bow, carrying with it the aura of time. The bowstring vibrated, and a power that was not inferior to the violet sword and the green round mirror erupted. Violet maple sword, omnidirectional mirror, and netherworld bow. The guy that Monarch Jean invited back actually forced the 3 kings of Shur country to use these 3 supreme divine weapons. No matter what the final result is, Shur country has suffered a great loss this time. Once the divine weapons are used, it will be millions of years later before they can be used again. The spectating godly kings immediately recognized the divine weapons used by the three kings of Shur country. After the initial shock, only gloating expressions remained on their faces. Three immortal emperor weapons. Interesting. Chu Bei glanced at the sword, round mirror, and longbow in the hands of the three kings of Shur country. He sensed the aura flowing on them, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. However, that was all. He was not afraid at all. If it were an immortal emperor's origin weapon, he might treat it seriously. However, if it was just an immortal emperor's weapon, then it was nothing to him. However, he was curious as to why an immortal emperor weapon would appear on the continent of origin. Die. At this moment, the three kings of Shur country attacked. The first king wielded the violet maple sword, and a violet beam of light shot out. It pierced through the sky and the stars, bringing along godly king laws that bloomed like fireworks. The tip of the sword surged with resplendent divine light, vaguely carrying a power that surpassed the godly king realm. The second king held the omnidirectional mirror, and with a crash, the surrounding void instantly collapsed. The sound of worship rang out, clear and majestic, terrifying one's soul. The world and the mirror melted together, forming an extremely compressed ring-shaped beam of light that shot out from the mirror, heading straight for Chu Bei. The third king held a bow in one hand and pulled the bowstring with the other. An arrow that invoked the supreme law of the continent of origin was formed, bringing with it a buzzing sound. At this moment, the aura of the three kings of Shur country rose to the peak as they controlled their immortal emperor weapons to attack Chu Bei from different directions. Let's end it here. Chu Bei remained calm, and his violet robe fluttered loudly. As his indifferent voice that was filled with supreme majesty fell, a colorful river suddenly appeared beneath his feet. The river water churned as mysterious runes lit up one after another, intertwining and fusing together. At this moment, the attacks of the three kings of Shur country had already arrived. The purple maple sword swept out, and a terrifying offensive aura turned into densely packed lines that surrounded Chu Bei like purple swords. Within the omnidirectional mirror, thousands of different lights shrouded the void, radiating in all directions. Even if a chaotic Lord Realm expert came into contact with the radiance, their physical body and primordial spirit would immediately explode. The nether bow shot out, and the bright sky darkened immediately, with ghostly wails and howls. Under the might of the three immortal emperor weapons, even the godly kings of the same realm could not help but feel their hearts sink, and their faces turned solemn. All of them looked at Chu Bei with eyes full of sympathy and pity. However, just as the three immortal emperor weapons were about to hit and swallow Chu Bei, a golden disk appeared behind him. Immediately after, billions of divine lights flew out from the center of the disk and rapidly intertwined with each other. After forming a huge palm, it simply and straightforwardly slammed towards the three immortal emperor weapons and the three kings of Shur country. Everywhere the huge palm passed, the scene of billions of people prostrating themselves in worship could be clearly seen. Crack! The purple maple sword's offensive aura turned into countless purple swords that were instantly shattered by the huge palm. Following that, the omnidirectional mirror's radiance also instantly shattered, and finally, the Netherbow's arrows. The destruction of the three immortal emperor weapons attacks was only the beginning. The huge palm formed by billions of radiance continued to sweep out, and when it collided with the three immortal emperor weapons, the latter shattered like tofu, turning into immortal emperor light rain and dissipating. Impossible. Looking at the destroyed immortal emperor weapons in their hands, the three kings of Shur country's pupils suddenly shrank, and a sense of fear welled up in their hearts. However, before they could launch another attack, the divine power in their bodies was sealed, and they could only watch as the terrifying huge palm slammed towards them. Chapter 622. On the battlefield, the three kings of Shur country felt the energy waves in the giant palm, and regret appeared in their eyes. This was a mysterious power that they couldn't surpass. They couldn't fight it at all. Pong! With a dull sound, the three kings of Shur country were smashed by the giant palm. Their bodies and godly souls exploded at the same time, turning into a bloody mist. The bloody mist dissipated, and the giant palm turned into billions of brilliant lights and went back into the golden disk. Then, the golden disk went back into Chu Bei's body, and the battlefield quieted down. All of the cultivators in the state of food also fell silent at the same time. To be exact, the entire land of origin fell into a dead silence for a short while. It's over. It's all over. Haha, we've got our revenge. Thank you, Senior. I'm willing to serve you for the rest of my life. Sensing the disappearance of the three kings of Sher Country, Sitting Mountain Guest was stunned at first. When he came back to his senses, he knelt down in front of Chu Bei, his body trembling. His eyes were filled with gratitude. I'll lend you a hand while I'm at it. Chu Bei looked at Sitting Mountain Guest calmly. He waved his hand, and there was a rumble in the distance. An enormous human-shaped object appeared. World of Gene. The great beings from Universe Ocean immediately recognized this behemoth and cried out in surprise. Of course, they also knew that the world of Gene was Sitting Mountain Guest's godly body. The three kings of Sher Country were all killed. Where did he come from? Did he really come from the slope of origin? To be able to kill the three kings of Sher Country so easily, he must be at least level 5. How did King Gene know someone like that? The godly kings looked at Chu Bei in a daze. They were all shocked. The death of the three kings of Sher Country was beyond their expectations. At this moment, Sitting Mountain Guest saw his godly body being summoned. He looked at Chu Bei in confusion. Senior, what are you doing? Chu Bei looked at Sitting Mountain Guest and didn't say anything. He waved his left hand, and in the distance, the flesh and blood of the three kings of the Sher Kingdom exploded. Instantly, the surging energy was extracted from the flesh and blood of the three kings of the Sher Kingdom. It turned into a dense light ball and surged towards Sitting Mountain Guest's divine body. With the infusion of the dense light, the humanoid behemoth's size continued to shrink. At the same time, a strong vitality emerged, and its body shone, releasing a resplendent brilliance. After a short while, Chu Bei reached out his right hand and grabbed Sitting Mountain Guest in an instant, melting him back into the divine body. Rumble. A dazzling light burst out, and a terrifying aura that was not inferior to the three kings of the Sher Kingdom burst out from his divine body. In the next moment, the god body seemed to have its own consciousness. It opened its eyes and shot 2 beams of dazzling gold light. Thank you, Senior, for giving me a new lease on life. The god body stood up and bowed deeply to Chu Bei. Besides respect, his eyes were full of gratitude. This is the real Prince Gene. He's back. That man actually has such a skill. He grafted the power of the three kings of the Sher Kingdom onto the lifeless body of Prince Gene and restored him to his peak state. Sensing the ripples of Sitting Mountain Guest's power, the crowd of godly kings looked at Chu Bei with even more astonishment. Chu Bei looked at Sitting Mountain Guest and said indifferently, I've done what I've promised you. As for the other people of the Sher Kingdom, their lives are up to you to decide. Task. Host opens the passage to the great domain of chaos. At this moment, the system's voice suddenly sounded in Chu Bei's head. Chu Bei was dazed. Then he looked to the northwest. Then he took Luo Feng and the others away like godly rainbows. That's the direction of the slope of origin. Could he really be from there? That must be it. After dealing with the three kings of the Sher Kingdom, he's gone back to find a way to defeat the Guardian. I haven't been to the slope of origin for a long time. I didn't even know there was such a being there. Seems like it's time for me to go there again. That's true. Let's go together. Looking in the direction where Chu Bei and the others had disappeared, the crowd of godly kings looked at each other and went toward the slope of origin. As for the great beings of the Sher Kingdom, they were all terrified when they met Sitting Mountain Guest's cold eyes. I'll deal with all of you when I come back. Sitting Mountain Guest snorted. Then he went toward the slope of origin. Is this the slope of origin that Sitting Mountain Guest mentioned, where the Guardian is? That's crazy. Is this a slope? Is the end of that 7-colored path leading to a higher world? A group of great beings from Universe Ocean appeared at the border of the slope of origin under the lead of Chu Bei. They were all dazed, and their jaws dropped. In front of them, there was a huge floating area. At the end of it, There was a seven-colored path that seemed to be connected to the starry sky. No one knew where it led to. It was so gorgeous that one couldn't tell the difference between reality and illusion. In this area, there were several figures. Even the weakest among them had an aura comparable to the three kings of the Sure Kingdom. That was to say, the beings on the slope of origin were all terrifying great beings who had entered the godly king realm. Looking at the seven-colored path, one big star after another was rotating. The great beings from Universe Ocean widened their eyes. It was as if they had arrived before the opening of the sky and felt the majesty and beauty of the path. At this moment, all the god kings on the slope of origin had their senses, gazes, and attention focused on the seven-colored way. Hong, Long. On the seven-colored path, two figures were intertwined. Two completely different and terrifying energies were colliding. Pong. The battle didn't last long. There was an explosion, and one of the figures turned into nothingness. Who else wants to die? Come and try. My hands are itchy today. Suddenly, a cold and emotionless voice came from the seven-colored path and echoed throughout the slope of origin. Damn it! Greenwood King failed. If I can reach the peak of level 6, I'll be able to fight him. Don't try if you don't have full confidence. Once you fail, you'll die. There won't be a second chance. That's true. Even though there are endless temptations in the higher world, the prerequisite is to defeat the Guardian and enter that world alive. How many epochs have passed? Other than Lord Yuan, who else has defeated him? As the cold and disdainful voice echoed in their ears, the godly king great beings on the slope of origin glared at the figure on the seven-colored path. What? The guy who died just now is the Greenwood King, the founder of the Greenwood Nation. He entered the sixth-order god king realm millions of years ago. Even he couldn't defeat the Guardian? At this time, the third-order god king realm experts behind Chu Bei also appeared on the slope of origin and started discussing. Chapter 623. What? Is there no one else who wants to die? I haven't had enough yet. An excited voice rang out from the path. Hearing the mocking laughter again, the god kings on the origin slope looked at the figure on the path. Although the fury in their eyes burned even brighter, no one replied. They had to admit that the mysterious protector was just too terrifying. He was so powerful that they were not confident at all. However, just as the god kings looked at one another with regret and helplessness, a rumble rang out. In the next moment, they discovered to their surprise that another figure had appeared on the path aside from the protector. Look, there's another challenger. Who is it? Who is that? The figure that had appeared on the path was naturally Chu Bei. It was also at this moment that all the god kings who had remained on the origin slope and the weaker god kings who had come with them all looked at Chu Bei with a swish. Chu Bei stood on the path. He did not even look at the protector. Colorful ripples revolved around him as he directly threw a punch at the end of the path. Crack! With the punch, there was a great rumble first before the path shook. Afterwards, the sound of something shattering rang out from the end as cracks began to spread. Who are you? The protector was stunned at first when he sensed the abnormality at the end of the path. He returned to his senses and appeared before Chu Bei as soon as possible. However, unlike how he faced the god kings on the origin slope, the protector became extremely stern when he looked at Chu Bei. You're the one attacking? The protector frowned as he stared at Chu Bei and questioned. Ever since he had accepted the mission, the senses of his soul had enveloped the entire region. It could be said that the most powerful existences were on the origin slope. No matter which existence it was, he knew them very well. However, the person in front of him made him feel extremely unfamiliar, as if he was beyond his control. Chu Bei glanced at the protector calmly and smiled. He did not answer the protector's question. He clenched his fist and was about to throw another punch. How dare you? Sensing Chu Bei's intentions, the Grand Region Guardian immediately shouted. His voice was filled with monstrous anger. As his voice fell, the seven-colored light around his body surged, and an incomparably terrifying energy storm swept out. The Guardian of the Great Domain had made his move. A black sledgehammer appeared in his hand. The sledgehammer was engraved with immortal emperor runes. He smashed it out, aiming directly at Chu Bei. The cold hammer light carried the Emperor's voice and surged like a huge wave, spreading out in an instant. At this moment, all the experts on the origin slope, including Sixth-Order God Kings, felt a chill run down their spines. This was an instinctive feeling of fear. Fortunately, this energy fluctuation that caused their hearts to palpitate wasn't directed at them. Otherwise, even if they didn't die, they would be severely injured and wouldn't be able to recover for at least 1,000,000 years. But even if it wasn't targeted at them, they still didn't have a good time under these energy fluctuations. It was as if their divine souls and bodies were being stripped away. It was an excruciating pain. You're just a perfected, quasi-immortal emperor. Facing the terrifying black sledgehammer, Chu Bei didn't panic at all. Instead, he revealed the Guardian's cultivation level with a smile. As soon as his voice fell, Chu Bei casually reached out his right hand and slapped the black sledgehammer. Clang! With a metallic sound, Chu Bei's right palm struck the black sledgehammer. In an instant, the black sledgehammer stopped. The terrifying energy contained in it seemed to have suddenly disappeared or been suppressed, unable to move forward an inch. Witnessing this scene, the overseer's expression froze. Before he could react, the black sledgehammer shattered into countless pieces. Immortal emperor. How is this possible? How can an immortal emperor appear in this great domain? The Guardian came back to his senses. His pupils suddenly shrank, and his expression changed drastically. After the astonished voice fell, the gaze that looked at Chu Bei was filled with a thick sense of dread. Move aside. Chu Bei looked calmly at the Guardian of the Great Domain and waved at him, his voice indifferent. Hearing Chu Bei's words, the Guardian of the Great Domain hesitated slightly, as if he was hesitating about something. What? Are you trying to test my patience? Or do you want to spar with me? If we fight, there will be death. Just as the Guardian of the Great Domain was hesitating, Chu Bei's voice rang out again. Hearing this, the Guardian of the Great Domain shuddered. Without any hesitation, he moved aside. Although he had already reached the perfected quasi-immortal emperor level and was one of the strongest below the immortal emperor level, he was still a Great Domain immortal emperor. Even if the godly kings on the origin slope attacked him together, he wouldn't take them seriously. However, facing an immortal emperor, he didn't have the slightest desire to fight. Although a perfected quasi-immortal emperor was strong, in front of a real immortal emperor, he was just a slightly larger ant. That was the difference in cultivation level, a gap that was difficult to cross. Did you see that? That Guardian really moved aside. Does this mean that he lost? Where did that guy come from? Who is he? In other words, after Lord Yuan, he is the second existence to enter a higher cultivation level. A perfected quasi-immortal emperor? Is that the Guardian's cultivation level? And the so-called immortal emperor? Is that the mysterious person in Lord Yuan's cultivation level? On the origin slope, the group of godly kings were all shocked. There was too much information from the Guardian, and it was difficult for them to digest it. Lord Immortal Emperor, you weren't born in this great domain, right? The Guardian of the Great Domain asked tentatively. That's right. I'm from the Great Domain of Chaos, Chu Bei said calmly. As expected, the Guardian of the Great Domain said. Chu Bei's answer seemed to confirm his guess. Countless eras ago, there was an expert called Yuan in this great domain who came to challenge him when he entered the quasi-immortal emperor realm. That battle lasted for tens of thousands of years. In the end, Yuan made a breakthrough during the battle and entered the Great Domain of Chaos after defeating the Guardian of the Great Domain of Chaos. The Guardian of the Great Domain knew that Chu Bei wasn't from this great domain because his aura didn't fit in with this great domain at all. Countless eras ago, Yuan had surpassed the supreme law of this great domain after becoming an immortal emperor, but the Guardian of the Great Domain could still feel that Yuan had an unbreakable connection with this great domain. However, the person in front of him was different. His aura had nothing to do with this great domain. What? He's not from the continent of origin. Is the Great Domain of Chaos referring to the world at a higher level? So he's an existence that came from a higher level. No wonder he's so terrifying. I knew it. How could such a terrifying being appear out of nowhere? Hearing the conversation between Chu Bei and the Guardian of the Great Domain, the godly kings, the original universe origin, sitting mountain guest, and the other great beings were even more shocked. Sir Immortal Emperor, I don't know how you came to this great domain, but if you want to go back to the great domain of chaos, you don't have to break through the boundary wall, do you? The great domain guardian asked. Do I need to report to you what I do? Chu Bei's face turned cold. The guardian of the great domain guardian immediately shook his head and stepped back. He didn't ask any more questions. Chu Bei ignored the guardian of the great domain guardian. He clenched his fist again, and the immortal emperor power on the surface of his fist surged. With a loud sound, the end of the seven-colored great path was completely shattered, and a huge gap appeared. Host has broken through the passage to the great domain of chaos. Reward: 1 use of a level 22 commodity. Reward: 2 uses of Xiaohei's power. Host: level 19 pinnacle. A series of system notifications rang in Chu Bei's head. Chu Bei nodded with satisfaction. Putting aside the other rewards, his own cultivation level was equivalent to a pinnacle immortal king. At the same time, the group of experts cast their gazes towards the huge gap. They saw a chaotic and misty world that they couldn't see clearly. Chapter 624. Is that world the great domain of chaos? I really want to go and take a look. Say, with our strength, will we be able to gain a foothold in the great domain of chaos? Just as the group of godly kings stared at the end of the shattered rainbow path and clamored, a misty aura suddenly surged in from the huge gap. The misty aura spread very quickly. In just a few breaths' time, it filled the entire origin slope and continued to spread towards the entire origin mainland. This aura is indeed far from what our origin mainland can compare to. My bottleneck has loosened. Is it going to break through? Haha, I have the same feeling too. Before long, the faces of the group of God King powerhouses began to show signs of excitement. They were excited to the extreme. Lord Immortal Emperor, you've increased the difficulty of my guarding mission by a lot. As Chu Bei opened the passage to the great domain of chaos, the latter's energy flowed into the origin slope. Those godly kings who were originally stuck at the peak of rank 6 all showed signs of loosening their bottlenecks. Sensing all this, the prison guardian's expression was extremely ugly. Then, he glanced at Chu Bei and sighed faintly. Host has entered the great domain of chaos and established the great domain of chaos shop. At this moment, the system's voice rang in Chu Bei's mind. Chu Bei was slightly stunned. In an instant, more information flowed into his mind. All of this matched his previous conjecture. Regardless of whether it was Battle Through the Heavens, Divine Tomb, Dolua Continent, Shrouding Heaven, Coiling Dragon, Journey to the West, or Perfect World, these planes each formed a great domain. Every large domain had a guardian. From what Chu Bei had seen, these guardians' cultivations were mostly between the 9th level of the half-immortal Emperor realm and the Great Circle of the Great Circle. Once an expert from this great domain could defeat the guardian, they would be qualified to enter the so-called Great Domain of Chaos. Of course, the weakest cultivator in this Great Domain of Chaos was not a rank 9 Immortal Emperor. On the contrary, any expert who defeated the guardian was a well-known existence in the Great Domain of Chaos. This was because the Great Domain of the Chaos Heavens was also a great domain, but its level was the highest among all the great domains. It was also because of the native inhabitants that they had set up guards to prevent people from other large domains from easily entering. Compared to the other great domains, the number of top experts in the chaotic heavens was several times that of the other great domains. It could even be said that the number of top experts in the chaotic heavens was less than the total number of experts in the other great domains. After all, if there were cultivators from other domains who could defeat the guardians, they would not hesitate to step into the chaotic realms in order to pursue a higher realm. In this place, immortal emperors were still at the top of the pyramid, but their numbers were far from just 1 or 2. There were even rumors that there was an even higher realm above the immortal emperor. Due to the infusion of the system information, he understood the relationship between the above heaven in the perfect world and the chaotic heavens. The two of them were like cities and empires. Above the high heavens was a region of the great heavens. Of course, it was also one of the regions with the most experts. There was once an immortal emperor who said that when you conquered the above heaven, you would not be far from conquering the entire chaotic heavens. At this time, Luo Feng's voice rang in Chu Bei's ears. Master, I wonder if I can go with you to take a look? When you're strong enough, you can naturally go and take a look. Chu Bei came back to his senses and looked at Luo Feng with a smile. After saying that, he took a step forward and stepped into the chaotic heavens. With me here, you can forget about leaving this place. Seeing that Chu Bei had disappeared, the guardian glanced coldly at Teacher Origin, Luo Feng, and the others. He snorted coldly and said, "Get lost. One day, I will defeat you." On the slope of Origin, Luo Feng looked at the guardian in the sky and clenched his fists. What right does a mere ant have to say that? Do you know that even the powerful territories in the chaotic heavens only have a few dozen immortal emperors? As for you, I'm afraid you can't even become a half-immortal emperor, let alone an immortal emperor. The middle-aged man glanced at Luo Feng with disdain. As a half-immortal emperor who was just one step away from becoming an immortal emperor, the guardian was indeed qualified to look down on Luo Feng. He had seen too many exceptional talents. In the chaotic heavens, he had seen exceptional talents who became immortal kings in 300 years, let alone 500 years. However, Luo Feng still could not become a half-immortal emperor after countless eras. At most 1,000 years, I will come and fight you. Luo Feng looked straight at the guardian and said indifferently. He then turned and left. After that, Teacher Origin, Primal Chaos City leader, and the other godly king great beings took one last look at the guardian and left as well. The chaotic heavens could be divided into 10,008 regions. The closer the region was to the core of the chaotic heavens, the stronger it was. Although Nether Big Domain was not as powerful as Above Heaven, it was still one of the top 100 domains. In Nether Big Domain, there were 24 immortal emperors. One Yuan Emperor State was one of the 24 Emperor States in Nether Big Domain. This immortal emperor was known as Emperor Yuan. Sky Peak Mountain was located in the center of one Yuan Emperor State. It was a mountain peak suspended in the starry sky, and it was densely forested. As far as the eye could see, the mountain peak was surrounded by dense immortal chi. Even the dense forest inside had become overflowing with life. At that moment, a layer of ripples appeared on top of the mountain, and a man in a purple robe appeared. This man was Chu Bei, who had just broken through the boundary wall from the Swallowing Star dimension. How dare you? Who are you? How dare you trespass on Emperor State's sacred mountain? There's no need to talk to him. Capture him first. Not long after Chu Bei appeared and looked around, 6 figures appeared in the void space and launched terrifying attacks in his direction at almost the same time. Chu Bei looked around. Among the 6 figures, the weakest one was at the 7th level of Immortal King, and the strongest one was at the 1st level of Half-Immortal Emperor. I'm just passing by. Chu Bei snorted coldly, and the terrifying attacks that were coming towards him instantly dissipated. At the same time, a wave of energy ripples surged towards the 6 figures. Bang, 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 bang. After colliding with this wave of energy ripples, the 6 powerful figures immediately retreated. They were like ordinary people who were suddenly hit by a heavy hammer. Their faces turned pale, and their breathing was very chaotic. This power, you? Who are you? Why did you appear in Sacred Mountain? The half-immortal emperor stabilized his body and looked at Chu Bei with vigilance. Obviously, he did not think that Chu Bei was really just passing by. All of you, back off. Before Chu Bei could speak, an ethereal and majestic voice sounded as soon as the half-immortal emperor finished speaking. In the next moment, a large number of bright light spots surged out of Sky Peak Mountain, intertwining to form a blurry light shadow in the air. Chapter 625. Lord Emperor Yuan, why have you come out of seclusion? Seeing the light, the 6 figures exclaimed at the same time. After reacting, they hurriedly bowed respectfully. Greetings, Lord Emperor Yuan. Emperor Yuan looked at the 6 figures and nodded. Then, his gaze fell on Chu Bei. Fellow Taoist, you have opened the realm wall between the slope of origin and the chaos heavens. You have done what I wanted to do back then but couldn't. Emperor Yuan spoke, his words carrying some confusion. Although fellow Taoist came from the slope of origin, judging from fellow Taoist's aura, you don't belong to my territory. I'm very curious. How did you come to the slope of origin? Emperor Yuan's eyes were filled with anticipation. He still had some regrets in the land of origin, but when he came to the chaos heavens, he realized that no matter how powerful he was, he couldn't go back. Every time he wanted to try, there would be a force more powerful than him that would stop him from doing so. And the person in front of him came from the chaos heavens to the territory he was in, opened the realm wall, and returned to the chaos heavens. How could he not feel waves in his heart? What? He actually came from the same place as Lord Emperor Yuan. No, he should have gone to Lord Emperor Yuan's territory first and then returned here. But doesn't every domain have a domain guardian? The guardian of the territory where Lord Emperor Yuan is at is even a perfected quasi-immortal emperor. Could it be that he is also an immortal emperor like Lord Emperor Yuan? Hearing the words of Emperor Yuan, the six figures not far away stared at Chu Bei. At first, they were stunned. When they reacted, their faces were full of horror and relief. When they thought of how they actually attacked an immortal emperor just now, they felt an inexplicable fear in their hearts. Fortunately, this immortal emperor didn't kill them. Otherwise, they would have already turned into nothingness. The question you asked is a secret of mine. Chu Bei calmly looked at the only immortal emperor who walked into the chaos heavens from the devoured star realm. He naturally wouldn't tell the other party about the existence of the system. If he made it up, he wouldn't be able to come up with a reason. Forget it, then I won't ask anymore. Regarding Chu Bei's answer, Emperor Yuan's emotions didn't fluctuate. It was as if this answer was within his expectations. Shaking his head, he sighed and said, I wonder if you can tell me your name? When I have time, I will pay you a visit. The owner of all heaven's business. 6 syllables floated out of Chu Bei's mouth. I've never heard of it before. Emperor Yuan frowned and continued to ask, May I know which territory this friend is from? Chu Bei pondered for a moment before replying, Above the heavens. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Bei didn't say anything more. He took a step and disappeared. In the southwest of the chaotic Grand Domain, above the high heavens, Black Blood Island was located in the center of the northwest region of high heavens. It was an island, but it wasn't floating above the sea. Instead, it was floating above a dense forest. As far as the eye could see, the island was surrounded by pitch-black fog. Even the dense forest in this area had become extremely heavy with energy, mixed with thick corpse energy. Whether it was day or night, not a single person could be seen in this dense forest. This was because it was one of the famous forbidden areas in high heavens. It was rumored that the reason why it was called Black Blood Island was because there were terrifying black blood droplets floating on the island. Even if one was as strong as a quasi-immortal emperor, they wouldn't be able to return after entering the island. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, a gust of cold wind blew over the top of Black Blood Island. A ripple appeared, and a figure slowly walked out of the ripple. I'm finally here. With his hands behind his back, Chu Bei glanced indifferently at the dark island below and looked around. Ever since he came to the chaotic Grand Domain, there was an additional teleportation function on the system map. But even with the teleportation function, it still took him some effort to come from the netherworld to high heavens. The new system mission asked him to build an all-heavens business in the strongest domain, and his first choice was high heavens. High heavens was one of the 9 strongest domains in the chaotic Grand Domain. On the surface, it had 39 immortal emperors, and there were even more quasi-immortal emperors, which had already exceeded 300. Although Chu Bei only entered the immortal emperor realm temporarily because of the level 21 goods, he also understood the true difference between immortal emperors and quasi-immortal emperors. In layman's terms, immortal emperors had already transcended the river of time and were not afraid of any great karma. When he was fighting in the realm sea, quasi-immortal emperors would have scruples when fighting across a different space-time. They were afraid of karma. However, immortal emperors were not afraid because they were no longer restrained by the power of karma. To be precise, the power of karma could no longer hurt immortal emperors. Through the information provided by the system, The most different thing about the chaotic grand domain was that it was a domain where countless space-time epochs gathered. In other words, not only were there experts from ancient times, but there were also experts from the future epochs. Of course, these experts from the future epochs had all defeated the guardians of that epoch's space-time. The weakest among them was at the peak of the quasi-immortal Emperor realm. Grand Domain side mission activated. Host accepts 3 natives as in-name disciples. In-name disciples who perform outstandingly can be transferred to direct disciples to sign a contract and be given a random contract gift package. Suddenly, the system's voice rang in Chu Bei's mind again. In-name disciples? Chu Bei was slightly stunned. Then, he noticed that there were 2 more dots on the map on the system interface in his sea of consciousness. One was a red dot, and the other was a blue dot. Chu Bei glanced at the prompt description and quickly understood what the 2 dots represented on the map. The blue dot represented his current location, while the red marked the location of the in-name disciples he was going to accept. Interesting. The corners of Chu Bei's mouth curled up into a smile. With his current strength, he really couldn't wait for more missions to come. Then, the main mission was to establish the Grand Heavens shop. The side mission was to accept 3 in-name disciples. Chu Bei glanced at the location of the red on the map again and stepped out of the Black Blood Island. Look, someone came out of the Black Blood Island alive. Are our eyes playing tricks on us? Even a quasi-immortal emperor can't return. As far as I know, 3 million years ago, there was a 6th-stage quasi-immortal emperor who wanted to enter the island to find an opportunity to enter the 7th stage. But in the end, although he successfully escaped, he was corroded by the drop of blood on the island. He went crazy and his whole body festered until he became a corpse. Could it be that that person was at the peak of the quasi-immortal emperor realm? Or one of the 39 immortal emperors? It can't be an immortal emperor. These supreme existences are rarely seen in hundreds of epochs. How could we possibly see one? And from the looks of it, he looks very unfamiliar. Outside the dense forest where the Black Blood Island was located, 7 immortal kings passed by. When they saw Chu Bei flying out, their expressions changed instantly. Chapter 626. The Stellar Mountain Range was located in the southeast of heaven. High peaks and deep ravines covered the vast mountains. Between the continuous mountains, there were stars jumping, which was how it got its name. The stars shone through the lush branches of the ancient trees, shining down spots of light. Chu Bei floated on top of a mountain peak and sized up a short mountain in front of him. According to the mark on the system panel's map, the location of the red light spot was precisely this short mountain. To be more specific, it was the huge rock at the top of the short mountain that was blooming with beautiful immortal light. This appearance is a bit like Sun Wukong. Looking at the huge rock in front of him that was ready to move, Chu Bei couldn't help but pull the corners of his mouth. When Chu Bei's divine sense probed inside, he relaxed a little. Inside the huge rock was not a monkey, but a child. However, this was also where Chu Bei was puzzled. Logically speaking, this should be a white and tender baby. Little fellow, let master lend you a hand and be born as soon as possible. Chu Bei smiled. He couldn't wait for the other party to be born on his own. With a point of his finger, a layer of colorful ripples wrapped around the huge rock. Rumble. At this moment, the huge rock seemed to have absorbed a large amount of nutrients. It was extremely excited and began to shake crazily. In an instant, a rumbling sound rang out. Above the rock, a rain of light danced and divine multicolored light filled the sky. Bang! With a shocking explosion, the huge rock collapsed. A golden light burst out from the center and rushed into the sky. It was too magnificent. A moment later, a chubby little fatty appeared in his line of sight. Little fresh meat. Meeting the little fatty's pure eyes, Chu Bei smiled knowingly. He recalled the scene when he first entered Perfect World and met Shihao in Stone Village. Daddy, Mommy. At the top of the short mountain, the huge rock exploded, and a chubby little fatty appeared in Chu Bei's line of sight. At first, the fatty's eyes were pure, but soon he seemed to have recalled something. He kept calling out for his parents, his voice anxious. At the same time, A strong hatred appeared in his watery eyes, and he clenched his white and tender fists. Chu Bei frowned slightly when he sensed the fat boy's emotions. From the information provided by the system, the cultivation realms in the chaotic heavens were roughly the same as the cultivation realms in the perfect world. After stepping onto the path of cultivation, they were blood transformation, grotto heaven, spirit transformation, inscription, array formation, supremacy, divine fire, true one, heavenly God, void Tao, self-severing, self-release, supreme, perfected immortal, immortal king, quasi-immortal emperor, immortal emperor. Although the little fat boy who came out of the stone looked only 4 or 5 years old, his cultivation had already reached the inscription realm. If he was in the perfect world, he would be a super monster that all the major forces in the 9 heavens would fight over. Not long after, the chubby boy calmed down and looked at Chu Bei with gratitude. "Uncle, was it you who helped me break Daddy's seal? What's your name? Why was it sealed in this stone by your father?" Chu Bei asked. From now on, this fat boy would be his unofficial disciple in the great domain of chaos. Naturally, he had to find out more about him. "My name is Buxian." After hesitating for a moment, the chubby boy only answered Chu Bei's first question. "Where are your parents?" Chu Bei changed the question. The chubby boy looked at Chu Bei and shook his head, unwilling to say. "Where are you going next?" Chu Bei smiled and did not become impatient. Instead, he continued to ask. "I don't know." The chubby boy replied, "Why don't you become my disciple? Then you will have a home." Chu Bei went straight to the point. "Thank you for your kindness, uncle. I have the inheritance of the clan and don't need a master." The chubby boy bowed to Chu Bei and declined the latter's kindness. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Just as the chubby boy was about to bid farewell to Chu Bei and leave, there were several sounds of breaking through the air. After a while, there were divine rainbows flying in from all directions. In the blink of an eye, there were dozens of figures hovering above the short mountain. Judging from the robes of these figures, they could be roughly divided into 8 forces. Obviously, they were all alarmed by the strange phenomenon caused by Buxian's appearance. "Woodcutter, do you know what the strange phenomenon that just appeared in this mountain is about? Is there a treasure of heaven and earth that has appeared? Tell me everything you know, quickly and truthfully." At this time, a man in a white robe glanced at the shattered stones around him and his eyes fell on Chu Bei. He spoke first. "Woodcutter?" Hearing this address, Chu Bei's body trembled and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Mingling in various dimensions, he was respected by people. He was numb to the words senior, lord, benefactor, and so on. Who would have thought that the first title he heard when he first came to the great domain of chaos was Woodcutter? "There is no treasure of heaven and earth that you are thinking of here. Go back to where you came from." Chu Bei suppressed the urge to slap these guys to death and waved at the group of people around him. Although these guys could not sense the aura fluctuations on his body, he did not dress like a woodcutter at all. Impossible. The strange phenomenon just now was clearly the birth of a treasure. How do you explain the stones around you? Tell me, what did you see? If you were not an ordinary person, I would have already attacked you." The man in the white robe shouted, "Indeed, there isn't any heavenly treasure." However, when the rock exploded, there was a beautiful ray of light that flew towards the east. The fat boy Buxian's eyes turned as he spoke to the group of people in the sky. Hearing the fat boy's words, Chu Bei's eyes showed a look of approval. He did not expect this little guy to be so clever. The sudden childish voice caused everyone's gaze to fall on Buxian. When they looked at Buxian, they were stunned at first, and then all of them were delighted. Less than 5 years old and in the inscription state. "Senior brother, this child's talent is one of the best in our sect. What a rare seedling. We must bring him back." After the people of the 8 forces inadvertently probed Buxian's cultivation, their eyes were blazing. Their expressions were as if they had found a treasure, and they even forgot about the strange phenomenon just now. These people did not put Chu Bei in their eyes, and they did not avoid talking to each other. When Chu Bei heard their conversation, he felt it was quite funny. He had just arrived, and the side task had been opened. He wanted to take in a registered disciple, but he actually encountered people who wanted to poach him. Looking at the fat boy, Bu Xian, after hearing the conversation of these people, his eyes were incomparably vigilant. His body slowly moved backward, trying to slip away when the other party was not paying attention. The leader of one of the forces could not help but put on a high and mighty look and stared at Bu Xian. Little guy, seeing that your talent is excellent, I have decided to bring you back to our sect and let the elders train you well. What do you think? Jiang Hao, this child's ownership has not been decided yet. You can't take him away just because you want to. The leaders of the other 7 forces expressed their dissatisfaction. Then what do you think we should do now? There is only one child. Do you want to cut him into 8 pieces and each of us take a piece? The man called Jiang Hao sneered. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, several air-breaking sounds came from the distance. When they saw the robes of the group of people who came from the distance, the people of the 8 forces were suddenly shocked, and their faces were full of disbelief. Looking carefully, they saw that this group of people was wearing black and gray robes. The robes were made of a special material, and there was a black cyclone around it, giving people a gloomy and terrifying feeling. Chapter 627. Dark. Demon Palace. Why would people from that faction appear in such a remote place like ours? Could it be that they have a mission? After recognizing the newcomers, the people from the 8 factions exclaimed in surprise. At this moment, when the people from Dark Demon Palace appeared, the person whose expression changed the most was the fat boy, Bu Xian. The murderous intent in his watery eyes became even more intense, but there was also some fear. He subconsciously lowered his head and straightened his collar. Greetings, lords from Dark Demon Palace. The leaders of the 8 forces immediately bowed to the group of people, their expressions extremely respectful. What was that strange phenomenon just now? A dignified voice sounded. It was a middle-aged man. Other than wearing the Dark Demon Palace's iconic black and gray robe, he also wore a black and gold crown on his head. He unconsciously released an immortal Dao aura. Lord Demonic Familiar. Look at that little fellow. He's Bu Xian. Suddenly, someone from Dark Demon Palace recognized the fat boy and exclaimed excitedly. Whoosh! Just as someone from Dark Demon Palace shouted Bu Xian's name, the fat boy suddenly soared into the sky and flew into the distance. However, before he could fly 100 meters, his body was immobilized by an invisible and terrifying force. After a while, Bu Xian was pulled back to the mountain peak under the gaze of the people from the 8 factions. This aura, a true immortal expert. Oh my God! It's said that the demonic familiar of Dark Demon Palace is at least a true immortal expert. As expected of the 3rd largest faction in our 100-flower emperor state, could it be that the little fellow we're interested in is related to Dark Demon Palace? Damn, if that's the case, this is still a hot potato. If any of you want him, go and get him yourself. We're backing out anyway. The people from the 8 factions looked at Bu Xian, who was imprisoned in the air, and then looked at the man wearing the black and gold crown from Dark Demon Palace. When they felt the suffocating aura released by the latter, their expressions changed drastically. Immortal Dao aura. The other party was a true immortal expert. There were a total of 39 states in high heavens, and each state corresponded to an immortal emperor. The province where the stellar mountain range was located was called the 100 Flowers Emperor Province. It was named after a female immortal emperor from the 39 immortal emperors. That female immortal emperor was known as the 100 Flowers Empress, a native of the great domain of chaos. It was rumored that when he was born, flowers of the great Tao bloomed everywhere in the chaotic heavens. In the 100 Flowers Emperor state, the strongest force was naturally the 100 Flowers Valley that he had founded. It was also the only monarch-level force in the 100 Flowers Emperor state. Below the 100 Flower Valley, the strongest forces were the Misty Illusory Manor, the Dark Demon Hall, and the Big Dipper sect, which were founded by 3 peak stage quasi-immortal emperors. Bu Xian, you really made us look for you. I didn't expect to meet you here. The true immortal expert leading the Dark Demon Hall looked at Bu Xian and suddenly laughed out loud. You destroyed my family, killed my elders, and kidnapped my parents. You will not have a good end. Bu Xian struggled to no avail. He roared at the people of the Dark Demon Palace. His malevolent expression was filled with thick, killing intent. Where did this little fellow come from? He's actually worth the Dark Demon Palace's people making a move. Bu Xian? His surname is Bu. Could it be the Bu clan that was destroyed a few days ago? So it was done by the Dark Demon Hall. That makes sense. Although the Bu clan's leader is a true immortal expert, he is still powerless against the Dark Demon Hall. After all, the weakest tamed demon of the Dark Demon Hall is a true immortal expert. Through the conversation, the people of the 8 forces vaguely guessed Bu Xian's identity. Little fellow, you don't know how stubborn your parents were. They used all kinds of torture and refused to say anything about the Source Heaven Stone. Even the Hall Master personally searched their souls, but he didn't expect your parents to plant a secret technique in their minds. As long as an external force enters, their souls will explode. At this point, the Dark Demon Hall leader's smile deepened. But now, as long as we capture you and use you to threaten them, they will definitely tell us everything they know. The Source Heaven Stone, a treasure that can allow a half-immortal emperor to enter the immortal emperor realm. It is said that when used as a weapon, it is equivalent to an immortal emperor's weapon. So this is the reason why the Bu clan was annihilated. Hearing the Dark Demon Hall leader's words, the people of the 8 forces were even more shocked. Chu Bei's eyes flashed with surprise. He was no stranger to the Source Heaven Stone. Back in the coiling dragon world, he had climbed hundreds of steps with Hong Ming. On the 99th step, he had met an 8th stage half-immortal emperor called Zifeng, who had a Source Heaven Stone. After Chu Bei had snatched the Source Heaven Stone, he had the system absorb it. After the system had absorbed the power of the Source Heaven Stone, a cone-shaped tool appeared on the system interface. Next to the tool was a line of eye-catching words, Source Heaven Power. Behind the words was a lone number, 1, which corresponded to the number of liquid droplets in the tool. Little guy, you miss your father and mother too, right? Come with me to see them. The true immortal expert from the Dark Demon Hall laughed loudly and reached out to grab the imprisoned Bu Xian. You will die a horrible death. Bu Xian roared, his voice filled with unwillingness. Bang! However, just as the true immortal realm leader's hand was about to grab Bu Xian, a low explosion shook the mountain forest. Then, an indescribable and terrifying force cut it off. Bright blood spurted out, splattering all over the mountain peak. The bright blood contained the aura of the immortal Tao. After it fell into the mountain range, the small stars were instantly crushed by the immortal chi of the blood. Who? Amidst the miserable screams, the true immortal expert in the Dark Demon Palace let out a furious roar. His divine sense instantly covered the entire Star Mountain range. At the same time, he turned his head and looked around. His cold gaze swept across the people around him, and a sharp killing intent swept out. It was extremely terrifying. However, not long after his voice fell, a look of fear appeared on the true immortal realm leader's face. This was because he realized that his severed arm could not be regrown. There was an indescribable and mysterious force stopping him. What happened? Why did the Lord Demonic Envoy's arm suddenly break? Who did it? Who in the 100-flower Emperor state dares to provoke our Dark Demon Hall? Looking at the true immortal realm leader's severed arm, the rest of the people from the Dark Demon Hall and the other forces looked at each other in shock. Something's wrong. Take Bu Xian and retreat. The Dark Demon Hall leader seemed to have sensed something. His other hand reached for Bu Xian again, and he prepared to leave immediately. Bang! A similar scene happened again. Just as the Dark Demon Hall leader's other hand was about to grab Bu Xian, that mysterious force appeared again and smashed that hand into countless pieces of flesh. In an instant, the Dark Demon Hall leader's aura became chaotic. His expression was distorted, and he was in extreme pain. This little fat boy is an in-name disciple that I have taken a liking to. How can I watch you take him away with my own eyes? Chu Bei took a step forward and directly appeared beside Bu Xian. He looked at the people from the Dark Demon Hall calmly with a smile on his face. Uncle, it was you who attacked just now. Bu Xian regained his freedom. He raised his head and opened his mouth wide as he stared at Chu Bei in shock. Chu Bei glanced at Bu Xian. He did not say anything and only smiled. Uncle, they killed my people and kidnapped my father and mother. Xian begs you to kill them. The little fat boy pointed at the group of people from the Dark Demon Hall. As he spoke, he knelt at Chu Bei's feet with a plop and kept kowtowing and begging. Chapter 628. On top of a small mountain in the Stellar Mountain Range. Who are you? How dare you interfere with the matters of the Dark Demon Palace? A member of the Dark Demon Palace scolded Chu Bei. He purposely emphasized the words Dark Demon Palace, as if to remind Chu Bei. Chu Bei glanced at the person who scolded him. He didn't say anything and didn't do anything. After a loud explosion, followed by a shrill scream, the powerhouse from the Dark Demon Palace exploded. Even his soul was blasted into nothingness. Master Ghost Flame. How did he die? He was perfectly fine just a moment ago. What happened? That person. It must have something to do with that guy. Seeing the scene before them, the members of the Dark Demon Palace trembled. After they regained their senses, they all looked at Chu Bei in unison. Their eyes were full of fear. Who are you? The leader of the Dark Demon Palace, a genuine immortal, was alarmed. He questioned aloud. Immortal energy circled around his body, and his aura reached its peak. The cultivator who was just killed was his right-hand man. He had already stepped into the Supreme Being realm. He didn't think that a Supreme Being would be killed so inexplicably by the person before him. At this moment, the members of the 8 forces also reacted. They looked at Chu Bei strangely, but more importantly, they felt lucky. Especially the cultivator who called Chu Bei a woodcutter. He shrunk his neck, his face full of fear. How could someone who could make the demonic envoy of the Dark Demon Palace be just an ordinary person? At the very least, he was a genuine immortal. Looking at you, you don't look like good people. Chu Bei glanced at Bu Xian, who was still kowtowing and begging at his feet. Then, he glanced at the group of people from the Dark Demon Hall, who were led by the true immortal expert. As his indifferent voice faded, a ray of light shot out from his eyes. Not good. The genuine immortal from the Dark Demon Palace sensed danger. He immediately activated all the immortal energy in his body and formed an extremely thick wall of light in front of him. However, his strongest defense couldn't withstand a single blow from that terrifying ray of light. It crumbled instantly. Boom. Another earth-shattering sound rang out. The area where the experts of the Dark Demon Palace were, including the true immortal, was enveloped by the light and instantly distorted. Gulp. Seeing the group of experts from the Dark Demon Hall disappear into the distorted space, the people from the 8 forces instinctively gulped. They subconsciously distanced themselves from Chu Bei, their faces filled with deep fear. I'm a mortal king. Why would such a powerful existence appear here? He's with Bu Xian. Don't tell me he's also after the Genesis Heaven Stone. Someone from the 8 powers couldn't help but exclaim with shock. An existence capable of annihilating a true immortal realm expert with a single gaze was at least an expert at the Immortal King realm. Haven't you seen enough? Chu Bei's gaze swept across the people from the 8 forces, his voice incomparably calm. Sensing the coldness in Chu Bei's eyes, the people from the 8 forces looked at each other and dispersed. Many thanks to Uncle for killing them. After a long while, the fat boy Bu Xian also recovered from his stupor. His voice trembled as he spoke. Uncle, are you an immortal king? Seeing that Chu Bei didn't speak, Bu Xian spoke again and probed. His chubby little face was filled with respect. You want me to save your parents? Chu Bei looked at Bu Xian with a smile.
Yes.
Bu Xian gritted his teeth and heavily nodded his head in response. If you want to protect your loved ones, your own strength is the only way to go. Even if I help you this time. So what? If your parents are caught again in the future, what will you do? Chu Bei guided her patiently and patiently. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Bu Xian's expression became somewhat unsightly. Then, as if he had thought of something, he said, Uncle, didn't you just say that you and I are fated to be and wanted to take me in as an unnamed disciple? If I become your disciple, I will definitely grow into an expert in the near future. Now that you've become my disciple, I naturally won't ignore your parents. The corners of Chu Bei's mouth curled up into a smile. Disciple Bu Xian thanks Master for taking a fancy to me. In the future, I will definitely cultivate diligently and not disappoint Master. Bu Xian cupped his fists and immediately bowed deeply to Chu Bei 3 times. Congratulations to the host for completing 1/3 of the side mission. As the system's voice rang out, Chu Bei discovered that on the map in his mind, the red that originally represented Bu Xian's position had disappeared and was replaced by another red, not far away. Go take in the next one, Chu Bei muttered as he looked toward the north. Then, he disappeared with the chubby boy Bu Xian. At the same time, 100 Flowers Emperor State, Central Region, Dark Demon Palace. In the middle of a vast mountain range, an exceptionally majestic palace stood majestically. It was surrounded by clouds and mist, making it seem majestic and grand. If one were to look carefully, they would discover that there was a layer of black mist on the surface of the palace. As the mist surged, it gave off a sinister and terrifying feeling. As far as the eye could see, there were groups of black-robed figures sweeping back and forth in every corner of the mountain range. It was as if there was an inescapable net. The person with the weakest aura was actually an expert who had ignited his divine fire. At this moment, there were close to 100 figures in the palace. Every one of them had an immortal aura circulating around their bodies. Those 2 fellows are still unwilling to tell us about the Source Heaven Stone. A black-robed elder sat at the head of the table. His gaze swept across the people in the palace, and his brows gradually furrowed. Hall Master, we have exhausted all our means. If we continue to torture them, I'm afraid they will really die, someone said. The Hall Master is about to come out of seclusion, but we can't even handle such a small matter. The black-robed elder's expression was gloomy. Gradually, the atmosphere in the palace became astonished. Hall Master, Lord 100 Ghost Familiar has been killed. Just as the atmosphere in the palace reached its peak, a tall and thin man in black rushed into the palace. He immediately knelt in front of the black-robed elder with a respectful expression. You have so many enemies. How many familiar demons have died? Is there a need to be so flustered? The black-robed elder's cold voice was filled with dissatisfaction. Hall Master, Lord 100 Ghost Familiar's death is a little strange. We can't tell which faction the person who killed him belongs to. Also, Bu Xian appeared in the last scene of Lord 100 Ghost Familiar's death. The tall and thin man in black continued. What? Bu Xian? Not only the black-robed elder, but all the other experts in the palace exclaimed at the same time. Then, they looked at each other with joy and excitement. Currently, the biggest problem in front of them was that they couldn't get any information about the Source Heaven Stone from the Bu couple. But now, Bu Xian had appeared again. This gave them a chance to turn things around. As long as they could capture Bu Xian, they had many ways to make the couple reveal information about the Source Heaven Stone. Let me take a look. The black-robed elder took a jade stone from the man in black. When he saw the scene of Lord 100 Ghost Familiar's death, his face immediately darkened. Hall Master, what's wrong with you? In the palace, the other experts were puzzled. Take a look for yourselves. The black-robed elder waved his hand and projected the scene in the jade stone into the palace. Celestial King. Everyone's eyes instantly focused on Chu Bei in the palace as they exclaimed in shock. Chapter 629. Can any of you tell which faction he belongs to? I've never seen him before. He should be from another emperor province. Why is he with Bu Xian? Could it be that he is related to the Bu family? So what if he's an immortal king? Do we lack immortal kings in our dark demon hall? Inside the hall, a group of powerhouses looked at the projection and discussed. Guisin, Deep Flame, you two lead a team and bring Bu Xian back. As for that guy, just kill him. The black-robed old man glanced at Bu Xian on the screen, then looked at Chu Bei and said. The 2 figures called Guisin and Deep Flame nodded in response before turning around and leaving. As they walked, their immortal king auras burst forth. It was incomparably terrifying. The snow region was located in the southwest of the 100 Flower Emperor province, and was close to the Star Mountain range. It was covered in ice and snow all year round, and there were eternal ice mountains and snow walls everywhere. Flowers of the Great Tao would occasionally bloom in the snow. Even if a spirit transformation realm cultivator accidentally entered, the bone-piercing cold would be enough to freeze their body instantly, let alone ordinary people. However, the Ice Soul Immortal Sect, a monarch-level faction, had stood tall in this icy world for countless eras. After the passage of time, the snow region had become the exclusive territory of the Ice Soul Immortal Sect. When people mention the snow region, they would immediately think of the Ice Soul Immortal Sect. Ice Yunshan was the largest snow mountain in the snow region, and it was also where the Ice Soul Immortal Sect was located. At this moment, a ripple appeared in the void above Ice Yunshan, and Chu Bei and Bu Xian appeared. "Master, why did you come to the Ice Soul Immortal Sect? The atmosphere seems a bit off." Bu Xian clearly knew something about the Ice Soul Immortal Sect. He looked down and couldn't help but frown. Looking around, the entire Ice Soul Immortal Sect was immersed in a sorrowful atmosphere. The young disciples were not in the mood to cultivate and were sitting cross-legged on the square, sobbing. Even the 4 words, Ice Soul Immortal Sect, carved out of ice above the mountain gate were hung with black lanterns on both sides, exuding a cold aura. "Who are you? How dare you trespass into my sect?" Someone in the Ice Soul Immortal Sect noticed Chu Bei and immediately surrounded Chu Bei with several divine rainbows. "Don't be nervous. I didn't come here with any evil intentions. I'm just looking for a fated person with the intention of accepting him as an in-name disciple." Chu Bei directly stated his intentions. "Come to my sect to recruit disciples? You must be joking, right? What's more, this is a special time for our sect, so we won't be welcoming any outsiders. Please leave quickly. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite." More and more divine beams of light appeared around Chu Bei. All of them cast gloomy looks at Chu Bei, their eyes filled with coercion. There were even true immortals amongst them. "I originally wanted to negotiate with you peacefully, but it seems that I can only use some means to intimidate you." With a smile, Chu Bei pointed his finger like a sword, and a colorful stream of light shot from his fingertip into the snowy sky. In an instant, the sky above the snowy region surged with colorful clouds. Streaks of colorful lightning formed by interweaving ripples surged out from the colorful clouds. Some were ball-shaped, some were snake-shaped, and all kinds of strange shapes. The sound of thunder was endless, and it was incomparably terrifying. Almost at the same time, the snow in the sky quietly stopped and turned from white to red. It was so red that it was like blood. It was extremely terrifying, as if doomsday had arrived. Looking at the strange phenomenon in the sky, the people of the Ice Soul Immortal Sect were shocked. However, before they could say anything, a pitch-black river flowed in the sky above their heads. Black fog lingered in the sky, and various star fields floated in it. Not only that, but golden flames appeared below the river and quickly spread out, directly enveloping the entire snowy region. In an instant, the temperature of the snowy region rose sharply, and the ice and snow melted. Amidst the interweaving of various visions, an opening appeared on top of the frozen cloud mountain, and a gigantic hand that covered the sky slowly stretched out. In the palm of the hand, a broadsword that was flickering with a cold light and carrying a frightening and fierce aura slowly appeared. Clang! The sword vibrated, and a sword ray shot out from the tip of the sword directly above Yunshan. "Who exactly are you? What are you doing in my sect?" Looking at the doomsday phenomenon in the sky and feeling the terrifying aura of the broadsword, the Ice Soul Immortal Sect's true immortal experts' expressions immediately changed, and they became especially solemn and vigilant. "Didn't I say before that I'm only here to accept an in-name disciple?" Chu Bei looked at the Ice Soul Immortal Sect cultivators around him with a smile and said with a threatening tone, "If you dare to ask any more questions, I can't guarantee that this sword won't fall. At that time, it'll be fine if you can block it, but if you can't, I'm afraid the entire Ice Soul Immortal Sect will be turned into ruins." As the sound of his voice faded, Chu Bei brought Bu Xian with a smile on his face as they headed towards the back of a mountain. Over there, boundless astral regions could be seen, and there were fluctuations of immortal king auras. The second disciple he wanted to accept was also there. Follow him. We can't let him affect the sect master's spellcasting. The group of true immortal experts' expressions suddenly changed, and they immediately followed behind Chu Bei. However, perhaps because of the broadsword above their heads, they did not block Chu Bei's path. It was a valley. In the middle of the valley, there was an ancient altar. Around the altar, there were hundreds of balls of light of different colors. At a closer look, those balls of light were actually star fields that had been compressed to the extreme. The closer one got to the altar, the more one could occasionally feel the dense star field power. On the altar lay a little girl in purple clothes. The little girl was about 5 or 6 years old, and her facial features were as delicate as a porcelain doll. However, the little girl, who was supposed to be full of vitality, had her eyes closed at this moment, and her body would twitch and struggle from time to time. The star fields around the altar were being pulled by a terrifying force into the little girl's body, and they were circulating in a specific pattern. The person who was casting this spell was a middle-aged man in a white robe. His hands danced, and the aura of an immortal king flowed around his fingertips. He looked at the little girl reluctantly and sighed from time to time. There was helplessness in his eyes, but more than that, there was monstrous hatred. In addition to the middle-aged man, there were 9 white-haired old men around the altar casting spells together. Their auras were all at the peak of true immortal, and they were only one step away from the immortal king realm. Are you guys going to refine her into a dead object? When he came to the top of the valley, Chu Bei confirmed at a glance that the little girl on the altar was the second in-name disciple he was going to accept. Immediately, without any hesitation, he reached out his palm and directly grabbed at the altar. How dare you? Who dares to come here and cause trouble? Sensing an external force, the 9 white-haired old men opened their eyes and cast their gazes on Chu Bei. At the same time, they launched an immortal Dao attack to meet the palm print that Chu Bei had thrown out. Chi. However, in front of Chu Bei's palm print, the 9 white-haired old men's attacks could not withstand a single blow and were destroyed in an instant. Then, with a boom, the altar exploded, and the spell casting was interrupted. Chapter 630. In the valley, the altar was destroyed, and a big hand held the little girl. Put my little girl down. The middle-aged man who cast the spell shouted, and the majestic immortal chi in his body surged. The compressed star field fell toward Chu Bei under his control. Chu Bei was unmoved. He glanced at the star field with a beam of light, and the terrifying star field instantly distorted and disappeared. Everything returned to normal. The middle-aged man was stunned, and his pupils suddenly shrank. Obviously, he did not expect that his attack would be resolved by a beam of light from the other party's eyes. It's the blood of darkness again. Chu Bei sent a divine thought into the little girl's body and frowned. Then, he pointed his finger, and a ray of colorful ripple entered the little girl's forehead. Who are you? Put Tong Tong down. Sensing Chu Bei's action, the 9 white-haired old men immediately looked anxious, and they immediately gathered their strength again. Stop. However, when the 9 white-haired old men were about to attack Chu Bei, the middle-aged man seemed to have seen something. He immediately waved his hand and shouted, Sect Master, he is hurting Tong Tong. Look carefully. The 9 white-haired old men looked at the middle-aged man and were about to say something, but they were interrupted by the latter. When they carefully sensed the changes in the little girl's body, they were all stunned at first, and then their faces were filled with disbelief. That drop of blood moved. Could it be that he is saving Tong Tong? With his own strength, how could he do it? Sect Master, you once invited a third-stage quasi-immortal emperor. Even he can't do anything. It is said that the owner of that drop of black blood is a powerful and mysterious immortal emperor. The 9 white-haired old men looked at Chu Bei in a daze and exclaimed, Chi. At this moment, accompanied by an ear-piercing sound, a black light surged out of the little girl's body and enveloped the entire valley. However, not long after, A gorgeous, colorful light surged out of the little girl's body and swallowed the black light in an instant. A moment later, under the nervous gaze of everyone in the valley, a colorful light ball flew out from the little girl's forehead. Looking at it carefully, the colorful light ball contained a drop of black blood. It's out. That drop of blood really came out. Sect leader, do you know who he is? Even a third-stage quasi-immortal emperor couldn't do it, but he actually did it. Moreover, it seems to be effortless for him. It wasn't just the 9 white-haired old men. When the middle-aged man saw the multicolored ball of light and the drop of black blood fly out from between the girl's eyebrows, all of them returned to their senses and were overjoyed and excited. Where did this drop of blood come from? Why is it in her body? Chu Bei stretched out 2 fingers and pinched the black drop of blood in the ball of light. He tilted his head and asked the middle-aged man. Forbidden Zone, Underworld Mountain. The middle-aged man immediately replied, Big brother, who are you? Just as Chu Bei was about to continue asking, the girl woke up. She slowly opened her eyes and curiously sized up Chu Bei. Chu Bei smiled and didn't say anything. He waved his hand and sent the girl to the middle-aged man. Father, your child's body doesn't hurt anymore, and I can't feel the cold anymore. It feels so good. The girl noticed the changes in her body and jumped up and down happily. The middle-aged man picked up the girl and impatiently probed with his celestial power. Then, his voice trembled as he said, It's gone. It's really gone. Senior, thank you for saving my daughter's life. The middle-aged man came to his senses and immediately led the 9 white-haired old men and the girl to bow deeply to Chu Bei. Their eyes were filled with gratitude. He was a celestial king, the sect leader of the Ice Soul Celestial Sect and the master of the vast snow region. However, he only had one daughter, and she was his only tie. Unfortunately, an accident happened. His precious daughter accidentally entered the Forbidden Zone, Underworld Mountain, and was parasitized by the drop of black blood. It was precisely because he had entered the Celestial King realm that he knew how terrifying that drop of blood was. He had used all kinds of methods, but he still couldn't force the drop of blood out. He even invited a third-stage quasi-immortal emperor, but the latter also couldn't do anything. He could only tell him that the drop of blood came from a celestial emperor. As time passed, the girl's life force began to fade. It was only a few days ago that they had no choice but to make a decision. They had to mobilize the power of the myriad starfields and use a secret technique to seal the girl forever. Fortunately, before they could finish using the secret technique, a mysterious man appeared and easily forced the terrifying drop of black blood out of the girl's body. Big brother, are you the one who cured me? Thank you, big brother. The girl pinched the corner of her skirt and looked at Chu Bei timidly. Her gaze was pure and innocent. Tong Tong, don't be rude. Hearing the way the girl addressed Chu Bei, the middle-aged man immediately reprimanded her. Judging from the other party's methods, he was at least a 7th-stage quasi-immortal emperor. It's fine. With a step, Chu Bei arrived in front of the little girl and patted her little head. Lord Sect Master, he came to our sect to accept a disciple. At this moment, the true immortal experts who had followed Chu Bei to the valley seemed to have thought of something. They hurriedly reported to the middle-aged man respectfully. Accept a disciple? The middle-aged man looked at Chu Bei in surprise when he heard what the sect's expert said. That's right. Chu Bei nodded slightly and pointed at the girl. She's fated to be with me. Senior, you want to accept my daughter as your disciple? The middle-aged man was even more shocked. Then, he asked, May I know where you're from? What's the force you founded? In the chaotic heavens, I've only accepted one disciple so far. Your precious daughter will be the second. As for the force I've founded, it's called the All Heavens Shop. You'll know about it soon, Chu Bei said with a smile. What? Senior, are you from another great domain? The middle-aged man caught another layer of meaning from Chu Bei's words. His expression immediately became startled and astonished. At the same time, the 9 white-haired old men also had strange expressions of disbelief. They looked at Chu Bei again, their eyes filled with respect and fear. All those who entered the Chaos Realms from other realms had defeated the Guardians. Even if such a person was not a celestial emperor, he was at least a great perfection celestial emperor. Senior, you're a great perfection celestial emperor? Thinking of this, the middle-aged man subconsciously moved his throat and could not help but ask, tentatively. Meeting the middle-aged man's gaze, Chu Bei smiled knowingly and did not say much. He just wiped out the black drop of blood with his finger. In an instant, a terrifying celestial emperor aura swept through the snow region. Immortal, celestial emperor. Feeling the celestial king power in his body being suppressed, the middle-aged man was in a daze. After a long while, the middle-aged man came to his senses and hurriedly instructed the girl to kneel in front of Chu Bei. Having a celestial emperor as one's master was the dream of many cultivators. Disciple Bing Tong Tong greets master, the girl said in a tender voice. Chapter 631. Side mission completion, 2/3. The system's voice rang out in Chu Bei's mind. Sect Master, is he really an immortal emperor? There are only 39 immortal emperors in the entire high heavens. Our 100 Flowers Emperor state only has 100 Flowers Empress. If that's the case, his faction will become an emperor-level faction once it passes the certification process. Heavens! I'm actually seeing an immortal emperor with my own eyes. In the valley, after hearing the middle-aged man's words, the group of true immortals bowed to Chu Bei in unison in an extremely respectful manner. Rumble. At this moment, a loud explosion rang out in the distant sky above the snow region, followed by the blooming of a Dao flower. Super King faction, Green Flame Pavilion established. This was the message sent by the Dao flower. The 100 Flowers Emperor state has a limited number of quasi-immortal emperors. I wonder who he is. The middle-aged man looked up at the eye-catching words on the Dao flower and muttered to himself. In the Chaos Great Heavens, factions created by immortal emperors were emperor-level factions. Once an emperor-level faction passed the certification process, the phenomenon would spread to every corner of the Great Heavens. Factions created by quasi-immortal emperors were Super King factions. Once they passed the certification process, the phenomenon would spread throughout the emperor state. So there's such a thing. After Chu Bei learned about the division of forces from the middle-aged man, he glanced at the phenomenon in the sky and calmly looked at the middle-aged man. He lifted the little girl and said, "When the All-Heaven shop is built, if you give up the position of sect master of the Ice Soul Immortal sect, you can join it. As for your daughter, I'll be taking her with me. You won't regret your decision today." With that, Chu Bei turned around and led Bu Xian and Bing Tong Tong to the third location marked on the map in his sea of consciousness. At the same time, the various cities in the 100 Flowers Emperor state were in turmoil. Did you all see the portrait of that person released by the Dark Demon Hall? Who the hell is he? How can he make the Dark Demon Hall go to such lengths? You can join the Dark Demon Hall as long as you provide information about him. Heavens, this offer is too tempting. Speaking of which, I've never seen this person before. Why is the Dark Demon Hall looking for this person? According to my information, the Dark Demon Palace has sent 2 Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings and 4 Eighth Heaven Celestial Kings. For a moment, countless experts from the 100 Flower Emperor state were discussing the arrest warrant for Chu Bei from the Dark Demon Hall. Exile Ridge, one of the forbidden areas of the 100 Flower Emperor state. Master, it's so cold here. Facing the wind, Bu Xian and Bing Tong Tong shivered at the same time. This kind of coldness was not brought about by the temperature, but by the aura of death carried by the wind. It was a kind of coldness that made one's heart tremble. Looking down, the traces of human habitation had also disappeared. There were no signs of houses, and the vegetation had also become especially sparse. Bright stars hung in the sky. The Exile Ridge, which was supposed to be brightly lit, was dark black. The top of the mountain ridge was also black, and it seemed out of place with the other areas that were brightly lit. At this moment, Chu Bei hovered in the air. His consciousness covered the entire Exile Ridge. He could sense that every mountain had a powerful aura. Master, look at what that is. At this moment, Bu Xian exclaimed in surprise. In the sky above the tallest mountain ridge, there was a massive black hole floating. The black hole was endlessly releasing black chi. This black chi gave off the feeling that it could annihilate everything. The purpose of our trip this time has nothing to do with it. Chu Bei did not have the mind to pay attention to the source of the black hole. Through his divine sense, he had already found the location of the third unnamed disciple. Walala! With a step, Chu Bei appeared in front of a strange ancient tree with Bu Xian and Bing Tong Tong. The ancient tree swayed, and the branches and leaves rustled. This ancient tree was not very tall. It was about a dozen or so meters tall, but its trunk was extremely thick. Its trunk was as strong as a swimming dragon, but the outermost layer of old skin was completely cracked, as if it had experienced tens of thousands of eras. However, if one looked carefully, they would find that its surface was covered in a faint mist, emitting supreme runes. The strangest thing was that there were only 10 leaves on the entire tree, and the appearance of each leaf was different. Some of the leaves were round and suffused with a faint golden light. Some of the leaves were triangular and enveloped in a crimson-red light. The distance between the leaves was very far, and it was extremely strange. Chu Bei clenched his fist and directly punched the trunk of the ancient tree. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Before Chu Bei's fist could hit the trunk, a strange pattern appeared in the mist on the surface of the ancient tree. It formed a resplendent wall of light, with surging rivers of stars flowing and interweaving. However, this resplendent wall of light was like nothing in front of Chu Bei's fist. With a loud bang, the trunk of the ancient tree exploded. In the next moment, ripples spread out and runes flashed. A huge circular mouth gradually appeared. This was originally an immortal emperor's seal, but it was easily broken by Chu Bei. A low howl came from the huge mouth. It sounded as if there was an endless hell in front of it, and it was extremely terrifying. Master, why is third brother in this place? It's really too scary. Bu Xian followed Chu Bei into the huge circular mouth and couldn't help but shiver. It was pitch black in front of him. Besides the flowing runes of the great Tao, he couldn't see anything. It was like a bottomless abyss. Chi, chi. Before Chu Bei could answer, a fierce wave came from the depths of the cave, carrying with it a scorching heat. It was also at this moment that the cave spun. The darkness completely disappeared and was replaced by a bright red color. Could it be that this place has already become a world of its own? Bu Xian looked ahead and gasped. He was stunned and stood there like a piece of wood. What kind of scene was this? The vast earth was a deep red, and fallen stars and star regions could be seen everywhere. The surface was uneven, and one could vaguely hear the sound of boiling in those small sunken pits. It was as if there was magma beneath the surface of the earth, and flames could burst out at any time. Rumble. This world seemed to sense the arrival of outsiders, and even the ground began to tremble. Cluster after cluster of red and black flames rose from the ground, increasing in number. Each cluster of flames was different in size. Some were only the size of a palm, while others were several meters tall. However, the similarity was that these red and black flames all contained the aura of an emperor. Moreover, they were all slowly approaching Chu Bei and the others. Chi. Suddenly, these red and black flames seemed to have reached an agreement. Instantly, they brought with them a scorching heat wave that surged toward Chu Bei and the others. Chu Bei's expression didn't change at all. He stretched out his right hand, and a divine light bloomed from his palm, instantly refining these red and black flames. Who is it? Did that 100 flowers guy send you to your death? In an instant, a cold voice filled with pressure and killing intent clearly entered the ears of Chu Bei and the others. This voice was extremely dignified and seemed to carry an irresistible penetrating power that could directly attack a person's soul and make them tremble in fear. Chapter 632. So you're still a perfected, immortal emperor, Chu Bei murmured as he looked at the small world. Then, colorful ripples surged out from his body. As soon as he said that, the blurry red light of the small world disappeared. In an instant, a huge figure appeared at the end. It was a powerful creature that looked like a dragon, yet not a dragon. yet not a phoenix. It could also be said that it was the combination of two divine beasts. Its aura was extremely terrifying, and countless star regions floated around its body. However, upon closer inspection, its huge body was bound by countless bright red divine chains, and the immortal emperor's aura flowed on the divine chains. It was these divine chains that contained the immortal emperor's aura that bound the primordial dragon phoenix here. Immortal emperor. The primordial dragon phoenix seemed to have sensed Chu Bei's aura fluctuation. Its originally ferocious expression instantly froze, and its huge eyes revealed surprise. Why are you here? What's your relationship with 100 Flowers? The primordial dragon phoenix's gaze locked onto Chu Bei, and a hint of fear appeared in its eyes. Are you referring to the immortal emperor of this territory by 100 Flowers? Chu Bei also knew some information about the 100 Flowers Emperor region. He looked at the primordial dragon phoenix and smiled. I have nothing to do with her. At this point, Chu Bei's gaze landed on the huge crystal egg behind the primordial dragon phoenix. You want to take my child? Sensing Chu Bei's gaze, the primordial dragon phoenix's gaze instantly turned cold, and its voice was also filled with coldness. Chu Bei glanced at the primordial dragon phoenix indifferently. Several fist seals blasted out, one after another, and bombarded the red divine chains binding the latter. Rumble. The red divine chains vibrated, and millions of Dao flowers bloomed on them. They carried the power of an immortal emperor and resisted Chu Bei's fist seals. However, after a series of explosions, the red divine chains couldn't help but shatter in the end. As the fragments of the divine chains dissipated, the primordial dragon phoenix's aura became even more terrifying. The moment it broke free and regained its freedom, it let out a loud roar, and its terrifying quasi-immortal emperor power completely erupted. This small world instantly disintegrated. The next moment, the entire Fangzhou Ridge began to shake and collapse. The primordial dragon phoenix hovered above the banished ridge. It opened its mouth and inhaled, swallowing the terrifying black hole in the sky. The banished ridge has changed. What happened this time? That's the ancient dragon phoenix. So the rumors were true. It was really sealed here by the 100 Flower Empress. How did it break the seal? According to what I know, this primordial dragon phoenix is a great perfection stage immortal emperor. Unfortunately, it had some conflicts with the 100 Flower Empress and was mercilessly suppressed by her. Then do you think the primordial dragon phoenix will seek trouble with the Empress after it breaks free from its seal? Countless cultivators were alarmed by the sudden change in the exile ridge. When they focused their eyes and recognized the huge object in the sky above the exile ridge, they immediately revealed looks of astonishment. I won't ask you about your relationship with Baihua Empress. Chu Bei placed his hands behind his back and calmly glanced at the primordial dragon phoenix. I'm here for your so-called son. You've already become an immortal emperor. Why are you eyeing my son? The primordial dragon phoenix was very wary of Chu Bei's strength and asked tentatively, Don't worry, I won't harm him. I just want to take him as my disciple. Chu Bei explained his intentions. Take him as your disciple? Hearing Chu Bei's words, the primordial dragon phoenix was astonished. Even in the chaotic multiverse, the ultimate goal of the younger generation of geniuses was to become an immortal emperor's disciple. However, even for them, getting an immortal emperor as their master was an extremely rare opportunity. Moreover, he had never heard of an immortal emperor taking the initiative to take him as his disciple. If he hadn't witnessed Chu Bei's strength with his own eyes, he would have thought that Chu Bei was joking with him. May I know what your emperor title is? The primordial dragon phoenix's eyes were filled with curiosity. There were a total of 39 immortal emperors in the high heavens, and he was familiar with all of their emperor titles. He wanted to use this opportunity to find out the other party's emperor title so that he could find him in the future. I don't belong to the high heavens, but you'll soon know the force that I've created. It's called the All Heavens Shop. Chu Bei said calmly. The All Heavens Shop? Facing Chu Bei's confident gaze, the primordial dragon phoenix hesitated for a moment before opening its mouth and spitting out a dazzling golden light onto the huge egg. Crack, crack. As the eggshell cracked, a little dragon phoenix was born. Because it had just been born, it had no dragon scales or phoenix feathers. It was completely bald. "Daddy." The little dragon phoenix recognized the primordial dragon phoenix at a glance and kept calling out, "Child, you should become his disciple. Follow him and cultivate well in the future," the primordial dragon phoenix said and pointed its dragon claws at Chubei. The little dragon phoenix seemed to understand. It looked at the primordial dragon phoenix reluctantly and walked over to Chubei with its head held high. "Master, Host's side mission completed. Host is rewarded with one use of Xiaohei's power." At practically the same time, the system's voice sounded in Chubei's mind. "I have nothing to worry about." The primordial dragon phoenix took a glance at the little dragon phoenix beside Chubei and let out a roar. Then, it tore through the all-heavens starfield and flew towards the 100 Flowers Valley. The little dragon phoenix opened its eyes wide and asked Chubei in confusion, "Master, where did Daddy go?" "Let's go. Follow me to create the all-heavens shop." Although Chubei had guessed where the primordial dragon phoenix had gone, he did not tell the little dragon phoenix. He did not want to interfere in the matter between the primordial dragon phoenix and the 100 Flowers Empress. His priority was to complete the system's mission. The great domains of the primal chaos universe could be divided into countless great domains. The high heavens was one of the strongest 9 great domains. In the great domains, there was a ranking called the Immortal Emperor ranking. There were only 100 people on the ranking. As the name implied, only those who had reached the legendary Immortal Emperor realm were qualified to compete for a ranking on the Immortal Emperor ranking. As for the benefits of being on the Immortal Emperor ranking, ordinary people did not know. Even those as strong as quasi-immortal emperors did not know the secret. However, every epoch, those immortal emperors not on the ranking would frantically challenge those on the Immortal Emperor ranking. Unknowingly, all cultivators knew that once one's name was on the Immortal Emperor ranking, there would definitely be an opportunity that belonged to the Immortal Emperor ranking. However, they did not know what that opportunity was. Apart from the great domains of the primal chaos universe, the other great domains also had their own Immortal Emperor ranking. It was just that the immortal emperors of the great domains were ranked on the great domains. For example, there were a total of 39 immortal emperors in the high heavens. According to the Immortal Emperor ranking, the 100 Flowers Empress was ranked 37th. However, if she was placed on the Emperor ranking, she would not even be qualified to be on the Emperor ranking. As for the number 1 immortal emperor in the high heavens, his title was by show. He was ranked 19 on the Emperor ranking. Chapter 633. Apart from the Immortal Emperor ranking, there was another ranking in the Primal Chaos Great Domain, the Force ranking. Under normal circumstances, the Force ranking would correspond to the Immortal Emperor ranking. After all, the difference between immortal emperors was directly related to the difference between the forces they created. In the Primal Chaos Great Domain, countless new forces were born every day. Whenever an emperor-level force was born, the phenomenon would spread across the entire Primal Chaos Great Domain. As for the super monarch-level forces or monarch-level forces established by immortal kings, their influence was far inferior to an emperor-level force. Therefore, the phenomenon would only appear in the large domain where they were located. No matter where a force was established in the Primal Chaos Great Domain, the evaluation was the same. This was because the faction in charge of the ranking system was the Origin Sky Pavilion, which ranked first on the overall faction ranking. The Pavilion Master who founded the Origin Sky Pavilion was also the existence who ranked first on the overall Immortal Emperor ranking of the Primal Chaos Great Regions. His emperor title was only one word: Origin. It was said that Origin, who ranked first on the total force ranking, was born back when the Primal Chaos Great Domain was first established. He was recognized as the strongest immortal emperor in the Primal Chaos Great Domain. Even among immortal emperors, there were very few who had seen the strongest immortal emperor before. As for experts below the Immortal Emperor realm, no one had seen his appearance or heard his voice. However, they all knew that he truly existed. He was not the only one. The 2 supreme immortal emperors ranked 2nd and 3rd on the total force ranking were the same. No one below the Immortal Emperor realm had seen them before. In the Immortal Emperor battle of each epoch, the 4th, 5th, and 6th positions on the total force ranking would change from time to time. However, the rankings of the top 3 were always fixed. It was said that tens of thousands of epochs ago, an immortal emperor had questioned the existence of Origin, who was ranked first on the total force ranking. He had even attacked the Origin Sky Pavilion in an attempt to invade the latter's headquarters. However, the immortal emperor had just caused chaos when he was enveloped by a terrifying force that shook the entire primal chaos great domain. In just a few seconds, the immortal emperor was refined into nothingness under the gaze of all the cultivators. It was also because of that battle that no one dared to doubt the existence of Origin. In the end, there were even immortal emperors who did not establish their own forces and directly joined the Origin Sky Pavilion. As countless epochs passed, the Genesis Heaven Pavilion eventually became the #1 faction that no one dared to challenge. Moreover, it was rumored that the strongest celestial emperor, Genesis Heaven Pavilion, was closely related to the Genesis Heaven Stone that was comparable to a celestial emperor divine weapon. As for how they ranked the forces, that was a uniform consideration that could be found in any large region. Surging Waves Mountain. Based on its name, it seemed to be a mountain. However, it was not located in a continuous mountain range. Instead, it was located in the central region of the 100-Flower Emperor Province, and it floated in the sky. It was under the jurisdiction of the Yuan-Tian Pavilion in the 100 Flowers Emperor Province. It was also where the 100 Flowers Emperor Province's faction rankings were placed. Since the 100 Flowers Emperor State was only one of the 39 Emperor States in the high heavens, the forces that were born here every day were mostly monarch-level forces created by immortal kings. As for those below the true immortal realm, they were not qualified to establish their own forces in the chaotic heavens. If anyone was discovered to be secretly establishing a faction, they would immediately be attacked by Genesis Sky Pavilion. Endless stars flowed around the Surging Waves Mountain, and there was even a surging river of stars surrounding it. This was an island, but Emperor Aura filled the air from time to time. Even if a quasi-immortal emperor was here, it would be especially oppressive. Since the 100 Flowers Emperor Province only had one place to rank forces, the Surging Waves Mountain was very lively every day. There were figures everywhere on the mountain. Among these figures, the ones with the lowest cultivation were at the self-release realm. In terms of the place with the most people, it was undoubtedly the Surging Waves Plaza at the center of the mountain. The Surging Waves Plaza was divided into 3 regions. The center was the core region, which was also the region where one's faction was ranked. Outside was the central region, and finally, the outer region. There was a clear rule in the Surging Waves Mountain. Any cultivator who caused trouble in the core region would immediately be killed by Genesis Heaven Pavilion experts. As for the central and outer regions, the Genesis Heaven Pavilion would not interfere. Master, are you really an immortal emperor? That legendary existence. In the outer region of the Surging Waves Plaza, the fat boy Bu Xian could not help but ask, "What, don't I look like one?" Chu Bei smiled. "Then wouldn't you be able to compete with the 100 Flowers Emperor Province's strongest expert, the 100 Flowers Empress?" Bu Xian looked at Chu Bei with admiration, his large eyes rolling around. "I've never fought with her before. Who knows?" Chu Bei shrugged. "Master, look over there." Bing Tongtong's young voice rang out as she pointed forward. The core region was an area enveloped by a semi-transparent spherical ripple. There were true dragons, divine phoenixes, black tortoises, cheilants, heavenly pongs, and other divine beasts circling around. Countless stars floated and rivers of stars flowed, carrying with them the aura of an emperor. Around the spherical area, there were many soul-stirring stones floating. Above each stone, there was a man in a golden robe, and on the chest of the robe, there was an eye-catching word, Source. In the great chaos heavens, one of the goals of all cultivators was to join the Genesis Heaven Pavilion. However, the requirements to join the Genesis Heaven Pavilion were extremely stringent. Those who could join the Genesis Heaven Pavilion were all freaks among freaks. Even the weakest cultivator of the Genesis Heaven Pavilion in the 100 Flowers Emperor Province had already advanced into the true celestial tier. Next, enter. As a Genesis Heaven Pavilion cultivator shouted, a third heaven celestial king in an orderly line stepped into the area enveloped by the spherical ripple. Boom! Accompanied by a loud boom in the spherical area, the clamor in the surroundings disappeared, replaced by silence. Then, a group of powerful cultivators focused on the battlefield. Amidst the buzzing, an army of ancient beings strangely appeared in the spherical area. These ancient beings' cultivation levels were about the same, almost all of them at the true celestial tier. That third heaven celestial king seemed to have expected this. The instant that the army of ancient beings appeared, his hands began to dance in an orderly manner. All kinds of powerful celestial king treasured techniques were used, accompanied by flowers of Tao, bombarding the ancient beings that were pouncing over. However, fortunately, there was a formless celestial emperor's power lingering around this core region. Otherwise, just the fluctuations of the celestial king's aura alone would be enough to destroy this region. Pong, pong, pong. This battle didn't last for long, and the ancient beings with the strength of a true celestial were all killed by the third heaven celestial king. If you pass the current test, you can establish a 1-star king level force. Do you wish to proceed to the next test? If you pass, you can establish a 3-star king level force. The indifferent voice of a Genesis Heaven Pavilion cultivator rang out. Continue. The third heaven celestial king on the battlefield glanced at the Genesis Heaven Pavilion cultivator who had spoken, and had just nodded in reply when 2 giants wielding wide sabers appeared. Judging from their auras, these 2 giants' cultivation levels were the same, both at the first layer of the celestial king tier. The third heaven celestial king glanced indifferently at the 2 giants, and then attacked first. Rumble. An intense battle broke out again. Compared to facing the army of true celestials previously, the third heaven celestial king was clearly much more serious this time. In less than a quarter of an hour, the 2 immortal king giants were defeated, vanishing without a trace. If you pass the current test, you can establish a 3-star king level force. Do you wish to proceed to the next test? If you pass, you can establish a 6-star king level force. The voice of a Genesis Heaven Pavilion cultivator rang out punctually. Give up. This time, the third heaven celestial king on the battlefield chose to shake his head. Chapter 634. 3-star king level force. Shadow Hall established. Just as the third heaven celestial king shook his head and gave up on continuing the trial and flew out of the trial area, flowers of Tao bloomed above the entire 100 Flowers Emperor province, including surging Waves Mountain. Numerous flower petals intertwined, forming a line of dazzling words in the air. Actually, I think he should continue the trial. Perhaps he can establish a 6-star king level force. For a third heaven celestial king, it's still too risky. It's fine if he passes, but if he fails, he'll die. That's true. Because of overconfidence, how many supreme elites have died in this trial? Have you all forgotten about the death of that 9th heaven quasi-celestial emperor? In the plaza, a group of cultivators looked at the third heaven celestial king who flew out and discussed spiritedly. Next enter. A cultivator from the Origin Sky Pavilion said. As his voice fell, another celestial king flew into the trial area. No matter who entered, the trial was the same. At the beginning, it was a group of true immortals, and then 2 giants at the first heaven of the celestial king realm. This 4th heaven celestial king was the same as the 3rd heaven celestial king before. After defeating the giants, he also chose to give up and establish a 3-star king level force. Next enter. A member of the Origin Sky Pavilion said again. This was a continuous process. As the Origin Sky Pavilion cultivators shouted, the elites who were queuing to be assessed entered one after another. It really is a similar process. Chu Bei glanced at the trial in the core area, and after muttering to himself, he flew towards a Origin Sky Pavilion cultivator with 3 in-name disciples. Unlike the trial area, the registration area was located in the central area of Surging Waves Plaza. The Origin Sky Pavilion cultivator glanced at Chu Bei and only had this one question. Report the name of the force you want to establish. All Heaven's Shop. Chu Bei's answer was also very simple. Go and line up. The Origin Sky Pavilion cultivator didn't look at Chu Bei and looked towards the next person after saying this. Quick, look at that person. Doesn't he look a little familiar? It's the person the Dark Demon Palace is looking for. Quick, quick, go and tell the Dark Demon Palace. In this way, the Dark Demon Palace will owe us a favor. He's still in the Central District and doesn't fall under the protection of the Origin Sky Pavilion. Don't alert him. Not long after, the gaze of a cultivator in the crowd fell on Chu Bei. When he saw Chu Bei's appearance, the cultivator was first stunned, then his face was filled with excitement. Time passed slowly. During this period of time, a few more people passed the assessment. Of course, they were all from King-level forces. After Chu Bei's arrival, the force with the highest rating was merely a 9 stars King-tier force created by a peak stage 9th Heaven Celestial King. From the beginning to the end, not a single half-immortal Emperor expert stepped onto the stage. Whoosh, whoosh. Right at this moment, countless rays of light flashed over from the distant starry sky, and they finally stopped in the sky above the central area of Surging Wave Square. Looking over, these divine rainbows were all wearing the same clothes. They were all wearing black and gray robes. The robes were made of a special material, and there were black cyclones swirling around them. They gave off a sinister and terrifying feeling. Recognizing these people, the cultivators in the Central District were shocked. Their faces were filled with disbelief. The Origin Sky Pavilion cultivators in the Central District also frowned, their expressions somewhat grave. Dark Demon Halls Gui-san and Deep Flame. Why have they appeared here? Those who come here are all people like us who are preparing to establish a force. What are their goals for coming here? Surging Wave Mountain is Origin Sky Pavilion's territory. No matter how strong Dark Demon Hall is, they wouldn't dare to target Surging Wave Mountain. As far as I know, Dark Demon Hall is frantically searching for someone. Could it be that the person they're looking for is here? In the central area of the square, the gazes of the cultivators focused on the people from Dark Demon Hall, all of them suspicious. Gui-san and Deep Flame clasped their fists at the Origin Sky Pavilion staff and said, Dark Demon Hall is only here to search for someone. We definitely won't break the rules of Origin Sky Pavilion. It's fine as long as you don't step into the assessment area. We don't care about anything else, an elder from Origin Sky Pavilion said. His voice was slightly hoarse, but it directly struck fear into one's soul. Gui-san and Deep Flame nodded in acknowledgement. Then, their gazes swept over the central area of the square. It wasn't long before they found their target, and joyful smiles appeared on their faces. Then, a terrifying aura surged out from the two of them, and strange phenomena such as galaxies and stars appeared. Then, the two of them directly sent out a palm strike in the direction of Chu Bei without any hesitation. Damn it! They won't even let us off. The expressions of the elites around Chu Bei instantly became ugly, and they immediately flew into the distance. In an instant, only Chu Bei and his 3 disciples were left in that space. Because the commotion caused by Gui-san and Deep Flame was big enough, even the elites in the central area were alarmed, and all of them looked over in surprise. Pong. However, before these 2 incomparably frightening attacks could land on Chu Bei and his disciple, they were blocked by an invisible power. Then, they exploded into nothingness with a loud bang. He actually blocked it. Gui-san and Deep Flame are both 6th Heaven Celestial Kings. Could it be that that person is a 7th Heaven Celestial King, or even an 8th Heaven Celestial King, or a 9th Heaven Celestial King? Who exactly is he? Has he also come to establish a force? Looking at the 2 shattered palm prints, the group of experts revealed expressions of disbelief. They once again sized up Chu Bei, and their gazes were filled with astonishment. It was also at this moment that Gui-san and Deep Flame frowned, their expressions suddenly becoming grave and ugly. Retreat. Almost at the same time, Gui-san and Deep Flame reached an agreement. Though the 2 of them had not used their full strength in the previous attack, from this attack, they could determine that this person's strength was definitely above theirs. Just from the image that had been transmitted back, they had judged wrongly. To be able to disperse their attacks so effortlessly, He was at least an eighth heaven celestial king. With their strength, even if they worked together, they were definitely no match for this person. People of the Dark Demon Palace, I did not provoke you, but you came to find me again. However, before Gue-san, Deep Flame, and the other elites of the Dark Demon Palace could leave through the sky, a cold and indifferent voice sounded in their ears. In the next moment, a layer of colorful ripples appeared around them, and they could no longer move. The celestial king power in their bodies was also sealed. Boom! Accompanied by a shocking boom, the bodies of Gue-san, Deep Flame, and the other elites of the Dark Demon Palace exploded. They did not even have time to cry out, and even their spirits were blasted into nothingness by the colorful ripples. In the square, the cultivators and elites were directly stunned, looking dazedly in the direction where Gue-san, Deep Flame, and the others had died, their expressions dazed and numb. They could not believe that 2 sixth heaven celestial kings had suddenly died like this, and the person who had attacked had not even made any move. If it were not for the sound of the explosion that was still reverberating, they would even think that they were hallucinating. Chapter 635. Quasi-immortal Emperor? Some cultivators in the plaza regained their senses and voiced their suspicions. I've seen all the quasi-immortal emperors in the 100 Flowers Emperor province, but I've never seen someone like him. Could it be that he's from another emperor province? An immortal king stared at Chubei and asked, "Speaking of which, why do the people from Dark Demon Hall want to capture him?" Another expert asked with a puzzled look in his eyes. It wasn't just the experts in the plaza who came to participate in the assessment. The gazes of the Origin Sky Pavilion cultivators also changed as they looked at Chubei. They began to pay more attention to him. Bu Xian raised his head and bit his lips as he said, "Master, they should be here for me. After establishing the All Heavens shop, I'll make a trip to Dark Demon Hall." Chubei smiled as he patted Bu Xian's head. Gradually, everything in the plaza returned to normal, and everyone's attention returned to the assessment in the inner zone. After a quarter of an hour, the Origin Sky Pavilion cultivator spoke again. "Next, enter." Following that, a young man in a purple robe, who looked to be in his 20s, flew into the assessment area, enveloped by the spherical ripples. It's finally his turn. We'll be able to determine his strength soon. If I'm not mistaken, he should be a Super Monarch faction, or even a 3-star Super Monarch faction. When the experts in the plaza saw the figure flying into the assessment area, they immediately revealed looks of anticipation. Rumble. Accompanied by a loud bang in the spherical area, the clamor in the plaza disappeared and was replaced by silence. At this moment, all the experts in the plaza held their breaths as their gazes focused on Chubei. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Rumbling resounded as the army of ancient living beings formed from true immortals appeared, and they roared as they covered the heavens and the earth as they charged towards Chubei. Facing this locust-like ancient army, Chubei's expression didn't change at all, and he didn't move at all. However, even if he didn't do anything, the ancient army that was about to reach Chubei suddenly rumbled as if they had been hit by an invisible force. The level of this invisible power was far above that of a true immortal. In the blink of an eye, the army of ancient living beings had completely vanished. Only Chubei was left on the battlefield. You have passed the current test and can establish a 1-star king-class faction. Do you wish to proceed to the next test? If you pass, you can establish a 3-star monarch-level faction, the Origin Sky Pavilion cultivator said, maintaining his usual indifferent expression. Continue. Chubei nodded without even looking at the Heavenly Source Pavilion cultivator. Rumble. After Chubei made his decision, 2 giants holding broad sabers appeared on the battlefield. There were stars swirling around the blades of the sabers, and they had the aura of immortal kings. The 2 giants brandished their blades at the same time. The terrifying blade light instantly arrived in front of Chubei, and strange runes blossomed. Crack. Chubei remained unmoved. However, the 2 broadswords shattered on their own when they were less than 10 meters away from him, turning into countless blades of light. Then, the 2 giants' bodies inexplicably twisted and disappeared. You have passed the current test and can establish a 3-star monarch level faction. Do you wish to proceed to the next test? If you pass, you can establish a 6-star monarch level faction. The Origin Sky Pavilion cultivator's voice rang out on time. Continue. The same words came out of Chu Bei's mouth again. As Chu Bei's voice fell, the spherical ripple trembled. This time, a tiger-type living being appeared. Its body was incredibly huge, and there were 6 wings on its back. The power of the star domain crisscrossed between each wing endlessly. The Abyss Tiger had the strength of a 6th heaven celestial king. It was also because of this that those 3rd and 4th heaven celestial kings had not chosen to take the risk. Instead, they had chosen to give up at the first moment. Roar. With a tiger's roar, the Abyss Tiger pounced at Chu Bei in front of everyone's eyes, its sharp claws wrapped around the stars. However, to Chu Bei, it was no different from the first true immortal living beings. With another pong, the Abyss Tiger's incredibly huge body exploded and disappeared. Looking at the scene on the battlefield, the spectating experts in the square revealed a strange look in their eyes, but they didn't show too much shock. This was because after Chu Bei easily killed a group of people from the Dark Demon Palace, they were already sure that Chu Bei had advanced into the Pseudo-Celestial Emperor tier. As a Pseudo-Celestial Emperor, he naturally could easily pass these 3 tests without using any tricks. In a short few minutes, Chu Bei passed another 2 tests. At this time, the atmosphere in the plaza had already begun to rise. The silence was gone, and there was a clamor everywhere. All of this was because of Chu Bei's previous battle. He had easily defeated his opponent again. However, the opponent last time was no longer a celestial king, but a genuine first heaven pseudo-celestial emperor. You have passed the current test and can establish a 1-star monarch level faction. Do you wish to proceed to the next test? You have passed the next test and can establish a 3-star monarch level faction. This time, the Origin Sky Pavilion cultivator's tone was clearly more respectful. Even the number 1 force, the Origin Sky Pavilion, was extremely welcoming of pseudo-celestial emperor elites. Continue. As Chu Bei's light voice fell, a strange mechanical sound rang out in the plaza. In the next moment, a humanoid puppet appeared from the lingering ripples. It walked step by step towards Chu Bei. Its body trembled slightly as if it had a life of its own, and a heart-palpitating red mist appeared all over its body. Under the gazes of countless people, a layer of green armor covered the surface of the magic puppet's body. At the same time, 2 dots of black light shot out from its eyes. Next, a series of friction sounds rang out from the puppet's body, and a ferocious and terrifying aura spread out. This is an emperor puppet. It's said that this emperor puppet was personally refined by Emperor Yuan. Although this is only an energy projection of the emperor puppet, it still has the strength of a 3rd heaven pseudo-celestial emperor. Do you think this unknown expert can defeat the emperor puppet? Feeling the terrifying emperor aura released by the puppet, the expressions of the experts in the plaza changed drastically. Roar. A loud roar that seemed to come from ancient times reverberated throughout the surging waves mountain from the spherical ripples. The terrifying sound wave containing the emperor's aura spread far and wide, spreading across the entire 100-flower emperor state. At this moment, the emperor puppet was like an ancient emperor beast that had just awakened from a deep slumber. The roar was filled with heart-palpitating cruelty and brutality, as if it was filled with endless destruction and slaughter. The source of the roar seemed to represent the world's most terrifying calamity. If not for the powerful immortal emperor power contained in the spherical ripples, the battlefield would have collapsed under the emperor puppet's roar. Interesting. Chu Bei glanced indifferently at the emperor puppet, and the corners of his mouth curved into a smile. He was increasingly curious about the strength of the number 1 immortal emperor, Yuan. He could actually refine an inanimate object into something so terrifying, and this was only an energy projection. Of course, this energy emperor puppet was no threat to him at all. Chapter 636. Buzz, buzz, buzz. On the battlefield, the emperor puppet seemed to have no self-awareness. As if it was being controlled by some invisible force, it roared again. In the next moment, endless mysterious runes gushed out from its body. The withered palm, which seemed to be refined from wood, slapped towards Chu Bei quickly and heavily, carrying with it a monstrous emperor's aura. Looking closely, there were stars spinning in the palm of the emperor puppet. A river of stars churned, a star field opened up, and chaos lingered. There was even a path of reincarnation faintly discernible. Chu Bei did not dodge, nor was he afraid. However, compared to before, he did not move at all. This time, his purple robes fluttered as he punched out. His fist did not look big, but it released a gorgeous light. Many bright runes interweaved, as if it was splitting the world apart, carrying with it a boundless emperor's aura. Boom! The world-shaking collision caused the entire surging wave mountain to wail and tremble. In the terrifying ripples, all kinds of emperor runes surged out, crazily suppressing the aftermath of the collision between Chu Bei and the emperor puppet. That mysterious person actually took it. It seems that he really is a third-level quasi-immortal emperor. I just don't know if he can defeat the emperor puppet. It's a bit difficult. If he wants to defeat the emperor puppet, he probably has to at least step into the 4th level. However, you also know that there are 9 levels of quasi-immortal emperors. Every 3 levels is a heavenly abyss. Those who can enter the 4th level from the 3rd level are 10 to 20%. With his strength, even if he can't defeat the emperor puppet, at least he doesn't have to worry about being killed. Even if he can't defeat it, he can still retreat. In the square, countless spectators stared at the battlefield with full attention, their faces filled with shock. However, as soon as they started discussing, a scene that left them flabbergasted occurred. The fist that had successfully blocked the emperor puppet's palm did not stop. Instead, it continued to charge forward. Crack! Along with a clear and melodious sound, the emperor puppet's withered palm collapsed into pieces. The revolving stars, surging rivers of stars, the coiled chaos, and the faintly discernible path of reincarnation had all vanished. Then, the multicolored fist directly bombarded the emperor puppet's body. With another explosion, a surging emperor aura filled the air, and the energy emperor puppet was torn apart. How is this possible? The emperor puppet actually exploded. This is the first time we fought. Could it be that he had already stepped into the 4th stage realm? Otherwise, how could he have destroyed the emperor puppet in one strike? The group of experts was stunned. They stared blankly at the emperor golem, which had exploded into countless pieces. When they looked back at Chu Bei, their faces were filled with shock. Amidst the buzzing sounds, the emperor puppet's body began to move. However, before it could reform, a golden disc appeared and swallowed it. It's gone. The group of experts stared at the disc in astonishment. Their faces were filled with extreme shock. Yes, if you pass the current test, you will be able to establish a 3-star Super King class organization. Yes. Do you wish to proceed to the next test? If you pass, you will be able to establish a 6-star Supreme King class organization. The Genesis Sky Pavilion cultivator also returned to his senses. However, he was clearly still not completely calm. His voice trembled as he looked towards Chu Bei with an additional trace of respect. At this time, he no longer dared to underestimate Zhou Yuan. As long as a quasi-immortal emperor who had stepped into the 3rd stage was willing to join the Genesis Sky Pavilion, he would immediately be conferred a significant position. It was far from what he could compare to. Continue. The same words drifted out from Chu Bei's mouth. What? Continue? A 6-star test. I've never seen one in countless eras. Me too. However, it's said that only 7th stage quasi-immortal emperors can pass. In the entire 100-flower Emperor province, the number of 6-star Supreme King-class organizations can be counted with 2 hands. Even if he can't pass, he should be able to escape unscathed. After hearing Chu Bei's words, the surrounding experts' eyes lit up with anticipation once again. Rumble. In the test area covered by the spherical ripples, a great Tao of chaos appeared. All sorts of phenomena overlapped on this great Tao. There were densely packed emperor runes, dazzling blooming great Tao flowers, spiraling golden lotuses, and flying divine birds. As the crowd watched with bated breath, a living being walked over on the path. His figure was very blurry and couldn't be seen clearly. However, one could see that he wore a black gold crown and had a tall figure. Various seals surrounded him, and the oppressive aura he released when he walked through the ripples was suffocating. This was a terrifying existence whose strength was far above the emperor puppets. Is that person also a projection? The experts in the square looked at each other and made their own guesses. Greetings, Lord Ku Wu. When this living being appeared, all the Genesis Sky Pavilion cultivators on Songlang Mountain bowed respectfully. The other party was indeed an energy clone, but it did originate from a perfected quasi-immortal emperor. In terms of strength, this energy clone strength was equivalent to a peak 6th stage quasi-immortal emperor. The energy clone sized up Chu Bei with some confusion in his eyes, as if he was surprised that he couldn't see through the other party. The energy clone asked, "Why haven't I seen you before?" "Haven't I seen you now?" Chu Bei said with a smile. "Then let me have a taste of your strange aura." As soon as he finished speaking, the energy clone's eyes narrowed, and rich quasi-immortal emperor origin power surged out from his body. In an instant, the assessment area erupted. Endless misty light peeled off from the ripples and surged toward Chu Bei. Almost at the same time, a disc appeared in the energy clone's hand. The level of the aura it contained clearly surpassed the quasi-immortal emperor level. That's the immortal emperor chaos disc. In the plaza, the spectators recognized the chaos disc and couldn't help but exclaim. In the chaos domain, every immortal emperor expert would refine a few immortal emperor weapons in their free time and give them to their followers. There was a record called the Immortal Emperor Record, which recorded the immortal emperor weapons that had existed since countless epochs. It's really an immortal emperor weapon that was refined by an immortal emperor and carries the true might of an immortal emperor. Do you still think he can retreat safely? Everyone's eyes instantly fell on the chaos disc, and their expressions changed drastically as they exclaimed. In a few breaths' time, the entire surging wave mountain was filled with the might of an immortal emperor carried by the chaos disc. All kinds of terrifying and strange runes lingered around, and even immortal kings felt an inexplicable sense of fear. This was an emperor power that far surpassed their immortal power. Under such an aura, they couldn't summon any will to resist. Suppress. The energy clone looked coldly at Chu Bei. With a cold shout, the chaos disc rumbled and fell toward Chu Bei with monstrous might. The moment the chaos disc blasted out, the expressions of all the cultivators on the battlefield froze. Even though they were separated by the spherical chaos ripples, they were still affected by the might of an immortal emperor from the chaos disc, and the flow of immortal power in their bodies slowed down. At this moment, all the spectators on the plaza felt extremely suffocated. It was an instinctive fear. Although an immortal emperor weapon was only a weapon refined by an immortal emperor and not an immortal emperor himself, it carried the might of an immortal emperor and couldn't be underestimated. Chapter 637. It's just a mere emperor weapon. On the battlefield, Chu Bei spoke. His voice was calm from the beginning until the end. His words seemed to be directed at his energy doppelganger, but at the same time, it seemed to be directed at all the experts watching the battle. With a buzzing sound, a tree branch appeared in Chu Bei's hand. The tree branch was very beautiful, filled with all kinds of dazzling divine light, and tens of thousands of different auras flowed around it. Chu Bei smiled faintly when the chaos disc came crashing over, and he met it with the dazzling tree branch. Clang! In the blink of an eye, the chaos disc collided with the dazzling tree branch in Chu Bei's hand. A clear and melodious sound resounded. Under the gazes of countless experts, the gorgeous branch sliced the chaos disc into pieces like tofu. How is this possible? When the chaos disc shattered, the spectating experts were first stunned. Then they quickly fell into a state of shock, their faces filled with disbelief. An immortal emperor weapon that existed in the emperor register had shattered just like that, and it had been shattered by a tree branch. Could it be that the tree branch in his hand is also an immortal emperor weapon? Even if they're both immortal emperor weapons, the difference between the two shouldn't be that great. It was just a single collision. How could one side have directly collapsed? There are only two possibilities for this to happen. First, the chaos disc is fake. Second, the tree branch in his hand is not only an immortal emperor weapon, but also an origin source emperor weapon. Judging from the aura of the chaos disc, it can't be fake. Moreover, Master Ku Wu's energy clone is already a peak 6th layer quasi-immortal emperor, so how could it be holding a fake immortal emperor weapon? As for the second possibility, it's even more impossible. An origin source emperor weapon is something that follows the immortal emperor's Tao. Every immortal emperor expert only has one, and it's impossible for them to give it to others. Then explain, what's with that tree branch? This. On the plaza, the spectating experts stared blankly at the shattered chaos disc and the dazzling tree branch in Chu Bei's hand. What's going on? The Origin Sky Pavilion cultivators were also stunned. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock and confusion. Origin Emperor weapon. When the chaos plate shattered, the energy avatar trembled. His face twitched. Clearly, this chaos plate was extremely important to him. However, when he looked at the branch in Chu Bei's hand, his face was filled with shock. Chu Bei didn't say anything and just continued to wave the branch in his hand. This was a level 21 item that he had previously purchased from the system. At this level, there were not many items available in the system, and most of them were not introduced in detail. As for this branch, it was simply labeled as having come from something called an origin tool. As Chu Bei waved the branch in his hand, a rainbow-colored rainbow transformed into a surging river that surged toward the energy clone. As if it sensed the terrifying aura contained within the rainbow-colored divine rainbow, the energy clone's expression changed. Then, with a loud shout, dense purple energy gushed out of his body. Then, a terrifying and majestic pressure seeped out of his body. As his eyes opened and closed, the sky cracked and countless stars turned into dust. However, just as his quasi-immortal emperor-level attack was formed, and before it could be launched, it was dissolved by the rainbow-colored divine rainbow with a buzz. In the next moment, the rainbow-colored divine rainbow swept toward the energy clone like a surging river. Accompanied by a shrill scream, the energy clone was forcibly refined into nothingness by the power of the divine rainbow. He won. He won again. Oh my God! Has he entered the 7th stage? He must be from another emperor prefecture. Why did he come to our 100-flower emperor prefecture to establish a force? Looking at the rainbow-colored divine rainbow in the spherical ripple battlefield, the spectating experts gasped when they came back to their senses. Lord Ku Wu has been defeated. You have passed the current assessment and can establish a 6-star Supreme King-level force. Do you wish to proceed to the next assessment? If you pass, you can establish a 9-star Supreme King-level force. After a long time, the cultivator from the Origin Sky Pavilion recovered from his shock. When he looked at Chu Bei again, his gaze became even more respectful and even a little nervous. Continue. Chu Bei smiled knowingly and gave the same answer. Hearing Chu Bei's words, the spectating experts took a deep breath in unison. In the next assessment, this meant that the other party would have to face a 9th stage, quasi-immortal emperor-level expert. As the experts waited nervously, a huge circular gap appeared in the assessment area. All kinds of strange phenomena appeared in the gap, and a dazzling golden path extended out. The sound of the great Tao rang out, and a figure slowly walked out. It was a middle-aged man dressed in simple green clothes. The moment he arrived, the entire spherical ripple seemed to churn. This was a phenomenon that did not occur when the energy clone appeared earlier. The middle-aged man had his hands behind his back. After sweeping his gaze across the crowd in the plaza, his gaze fixed on Chu Bei. He smiled and nodded in greeting. Who is this person? Needless to say, he must be one of the higher-ups of the Origin Sky Pavilion. Is he the examiner of the 9-star Supreme King-level force? Logically speaking, his strength should have reached the 9th stage quasi-immortal emperor level. The spectating experts' gazes landed on the green-clothed man. Their gazes were filled with admiration, and some were suspicious. However, unlike the spectating experts, the Origin Sky Pavilion cultivators' expressions changed drastically when they saw the green-clothed man's appearance. Their expressions were filled with shock, as though they had encountered an unexpected situation. Your Majesty, how could it be your projection? It's the 9 stars assessment. Shouldn't you come out after the Emperor Level Force assessment? After regaining their senses, the Origin Sky Pavilion staff hurriedly kowtowed to the green-clothed man. Their expressions were incomparably respectful. What? Could he be Origin Emperor? The person ranked first on the Great Domain's Immortal Emperor rankings. No, this is Origin Emperor's energy projection, but as far as I know, Origin Emperor's energy projection is the last assessment. Once he passes, it represents the birth of an Emperor-level force. It should be the 9-star Supreme King-level force assessment. To defeat Origin Emperor's energy projection, one would have to truly enter the Immortal Emperor stage. I've never heard of a perfected quasi-immortal Emperor-level force. Upon hearing the Origin Sky Pavilion cultivators' words, the spectating experts in the plaza instantly turned ashen. Every one of them felt as though they had been struck by a bolt from the blue, or as though a bucket of cold water had been poured over them from head to toe. Their entire bodies were numb. The appearance of Origin Emperor's energy projection was too sudden and unexpected. They were all caught off guard. Doesn't this mean that it's very unfair to that person? Against Origin Emperor's energy projection, he's bound to lose. He can only stop at the 6-star Supreme King-level force, an expert said. Chapter 638. He's the Pavilion Master of the strongest Emperor-level faction, the Origin Sky Pavilion. On the square, all the experts were dumbfounded with their mouths agape. Their brains had already lost the ability to think. They stood there like wooden blocks, staring blankly at the azure-robed man. I'm so lucky to see the strongest celestial emperor in the myriad heavens, even if it's just an energy projection. The group of experts took a deep breath. Their shocked expressions were as fast as lightning. On the battlefield, Chu Bei glanced at the azure-robed man. His expression became a little serious. The energy projection in front of him was roughly equivalent to a perfected celestial emperor. He was not afraid. However, the aura that the other party unintentionally released gave him a sense of oppression. He was certain that even the celestial emperor realm had more detailed divisions. At the very least, he did not have any confidence in defeating the Origin Sky Emperor's true body behind this energy projection. Your aura is very special. However, I've encountered people similar to you before. The Origin Sky Emperor spoke. He was seriously sizing up Chu Bei. If you win, you can naturally create an Emperor-level faction. If you lose, you can create a 9-star Supreme Monarch-level faction. Even if you lose, you'll at least be a 9-star Supreme Monarch-level faction. Damn, Lord Origin Sky Emperor is very reasonable. It seems like he's taking advantage of the situation. In our 100 Flowers Emperor province, other than the 100 Flowers Valley founded by the 100 Flowers Empress, there are only 3 9-star Supreme Monarch-level factions, the Dark Demon Hall, the Tiangang Sect, and the Misty Illusory Manor. If nothing goes wrong, there will be 4 after today. I just don't know the name of his faction. I don't want to create a faction anymore. I'll just join his faction. In the square, the group of powerhouses discussed animatedly, and clamorous noises rose from all directions. No matter how strong you are, you're just an energy projection. Is there a need for the next test? Chu Bei calmly looked at the azure-robed man. I still have to go through the process. As the azure-robed man's laughter fell, there was a loud rumble. The test area that was enveloped by the spherical ripple was instantly enveloped by a black light. At that moment, whether it was the experts in the plaza or the Origin Sky Pavilion cultivators, their souls trembled. Gradually, all that was left in his line of sight was darkness. No matter how powerful their divine senses were, they were unable to detect what was happening in the test area. Does this mean that I can't continue watching the battle? The group of experts stared blankly at the battlefield, their faces filled with regret. Looks like we can only wait for the results. The group of powerhouses felt rather helpless, and their voices were filled with anxiety. At the same time, in the assessment battlefield, the moment the black light filled the area evolved into an independent world. Looking closely, many of them were holding weapons, but most of them were broken. As far as the eye could see, this place was filled with primal chaos, and there were no signs of it being opened. However, all kinds of illusions appeared in the chaos. There were surging galaxies, floating star regions, moving stars, and countless chaotic creatures. At this moment, Chu Bei was floating in the void of this chaos world. His eyes were closed as if he was recuperating. Boom! Right at this moment, there was a loud sound of thunder. A huge mountain peak appeared in the void above Chu Bei's head. The mountain peak was surrounded by countless Dao flowers, and it burst open from the middle. The light of the Dao was dazzling, and a terrifying divine chain carrying the aura of an emperor descended. Chu Bei's expression did not change, and he casually raised his hand to meet the attack. Colorful ripples shot out from his palm, instantly shattering the terrifying divine chain. After the first divine chain was destroyed, the sound of thunder rang out again, and even more terrifying divine chains came crashing down one after another. From the first divine chain, which was equivalent to the full force attack of a first-level quasi-immortal emperor, to the ninth divine chain, which was equivalent to the full force attack of a ninth-level quasi-immortal emperor, Chu Bei shattered all of them. If I'm not wrong, you should be from another large region. Otherwise, an immortal emperor expert would not suddenly appear in this large region of chaos. The divine chain disappeared, and the azure-robed man appeared. As he spoke, he launched a terrifying attack at Chu Bei. Chu Bei opened his eyes and smiled at the azure-robed man, nodding as he neutralized the opponent's attack. You've passed the test. After an unknown period of time, the azure-robed man's figure began to turn transparent. His energy had been completely depleted, and there was no need to continue fighting. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his sleeve, and a Dao flower shot out. In the next moment, his figure completely disappeared. It was also at this moment that the surrounding black light disappeared, and the chaotic world disappeared. Look, we can see the battlefield again. Where did the Origin Thearcha's energy clone go? Could it be that the battle is already over? In the plaza, some of the spectating experts were the first to exclaim, "Rumble." However, before they could guess, there was a loud bang in the distant chaotic sky. Hundreds of millions of Dao flowers bloomed, intertwining to form 10 eye-catching words. Emperor-level faction. All Heaven Shop established. The same phenomenon occurred not only in the sky above the surging waves mountain, but also in the sky above the 100-flower Emperor State, the entire sky above high heavens, and every corner of the large region of chaos. Emperor-level faction? How is that possible? Does that mean the Origin Thearcha's energy clone has been defeated? That means he's a true immortal emperor. Heavens, an immortal emperor. No wonder he could shatter the chaos disk. Looking up at the words in the sky, the crowd of experts on the Blue Wave Square recovered from their shock and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Look at the sky. After 1,000,000 years, another Emperor-level faction has finally been born. Judging from the color, the Immortal Emperor's assessment location is above high heavens, as expected of one of the strongest 9 regions. Doesn't that mean there are 40 Immortal Emperors above high heavens now? All Heaven Shop? I wonder what the conditions are for him to join. Experts in every corner of the large region of chaos looked up at the sky and stared at the words in the sky, unable to recover their senses for a long time. Southwest of the 100-flower Emperor State, Snow Region, Ice Soul Immortal Sect. Sect Master, why does this All Heaven Shop sound so familiar? In front of a majestic hall, dozens of figures stared at the sky, dumbfounded. The person in the lead was a middle-aged man in white robes. All Heaven Shop. It's the All Heaven Shop. Before the middle-aged man could speak, A white-haired elder seemed to recall something and exclaimed, "The immortal emperor that young Miss followed said he was going to establish the All-Heaven Shop. I didn't expect it to be established so quickly, and it's really an emperor-level faction." "This is an opportunity for Tong Tong, an emperor-level faction," the middle-aged man muttered to himself. Hesitation appeared in his eyes as he spoke. Although he had established the Ice Soul Immortal sect, with his strength as an immortal king, he would most likely be at the bottom of the hierarchy if he joined an emperor-level faction. However, if he joined the All-Heaven Shop, he would definitely be a senior figure. After all, the immortal emperor had told him before he left that he could join the All-Heaven Shop as long as he was no longer the sect master of the Ice Soul Immortal sect. "Sect master, this is also an opportunity for you. You should go," a white-haired elder said when he noticed the man's expression. Chapter 639. Sky Market. One of the 9 most powerful domains in the chaotic multiverse. The Cloud Cliff Pavilion was located in the northwest of Sky Market. It was a supreme king-class force. After 1,000,000 years, another Emperor-class force has been born. That's the direction of high heavens. All-Heaven Shop? The name of this Emperor-class force is quite interesting. Could this immortal emperor have been a merchant when he first started cultivating? On the various main peaks, countless disciples raised their heads to look at the sky, each and every one of them extremely astonished. "Lord Hongming, what's wrong? Do you know about this All-Heaven Shop?" A disciple noticed the strange expression on the Lord's face and asked tentatively. "You're finally here," the Lord murmured. Then, he swept his gaze across the disciples beside him and sighed. "Perhaps this All-Heaven Shop is a better home for me." "Lord Hongming, what do you mean? Are you leaving?" A disciple seemed to have heard something and immediately asked. "There are some things that I have to talk to the pavilion master face-to-face. Perhaps I'll be leaving the Cloud Cliff Pavilion soon." With that, Hongming walked toward the highest peak. Above high heavens, Emperor Province under the moon. In the middle of Emperor Province, on a sacred mountain surrounded by galaxies, a slender figure stood in the ethereal, immortal fog. Her hair danced in the wind, and the river of time flowed in her eyes. 2 emperors in one province? Huh? Interesting. The woman looked in the direction of surging Wave Mountain. Her exquisite and flawless facial features were outlined with a playful expression. Like Centauria Empress, she was also an empress, one of the 39 immortal emperors in high heavens. Above high heavens, Emperor Province. This large province was just like its name. At a glance, there was no sign of life. It could even be said that this huge Emperor Province only existed for one immortal emperor. Looking across, the reddish-brown land seemed to be stained with blood. It was cold and desolate. Desolation and emptiness coexisted. Some huge rocks stood on the ground sporadically. At first glance, they looked like tombstones. The world was dark, and the faint black fog added a gloomy feeling to this Emperor Province. The endless reddish-brown land was distant and dead. There was no sign of life at all. "The 40th? I wonder who is stronger between you and that guy from 100 Blossoms? What's his rank on the monarch ranking?" In the depths of the reddish-brown earth, a distant and low voice came out. A beam of light pierced through the heavens and landed on the eye-catching words intertwined with the flowers of the Tao. "High heavens, Star Ocean Emperor State." Whoosh! This Emperor District was especially special. It had no land and was completely a boundless silver ocean. From time to time, waves rolled up like a metal storm hitting the shore. Rumble. Accompanied by a loud noise, the sea surface seemed to have been sliced by a heaven-reaching giant sword, splitting into 2. Then, Immortal Emperor Aura seeped out, crossing the past, present, and future. All-Heaven Shop, what an interesting name. An imposing figure appeared on the surface of the sea. A pair of cold eyes stared at the sky. Everything shook, and the river of time became chaotic at this moment. Above high heavens, on the floating island Emperor District, as far as the eye could see, Emperor District was formed by countless islands. On every island, there were innumerable powerhouses living there. Looks like there's another competitor now. In the air above one of the largest islands, an illusory figure appeared. The aura of an immortal emperor leaked out, causing people to be intimidated. The immortal emperors in high heavens woke up one after another and muttered to themselves. 100 Flowers Emperor State, Surging Wave Mountain. Chu Bei had just returned to the plaza when a group of Origin Sky Pavilion cultivators immediately came forward to greet him respectfully. Lord Immortal Emperor, may I know where your All Heavens shop is located? It's an Emperor-level faction. Please let us record and advertise it for you. This way, you can avoid some unnecessary trouble. At least no ignorant people will rashly barge into your territory, Origin Sky Pavilion cultivator said. Chu Bei thought for a moment and said, Black Blood Island? What? Black Blood Island? Isn't that one of the forbidden areas? Why did you choose that place? Legend has it that even a quasi-immortal emperor never returned. Upon hearing Chu Bei's words, the Origin Sky Pavilion cultivators were stunned. Then, their faces were filled with shock. The surrounding experts also looked surprised. What? Is there a problem? Chu Bei asked with a smile on his face. Upon hearing Chu Bei's words, the Origin Sky Pavilion cultivators were stunned. They seemed to recall something and hurriedly said, If it's you, there shouldn't be a problem. To them, Black Blood Island was a forbidden area. However, to an immortal emperor, it might be no different from an ordinary area. The Emperor-level faction All Heavens shop has been established. Mission completed. Reward: Host has obtained the right to use a level 22 product. At that moment, the system's voice sounded in Chu Bei's mind. Greetings, Lord Immortal Emperor. As time passed, the spectating experts also reacted and immediately cupped their fists and bowed to Chu Bei. Chu Bei nodded slightly. I wonder if any of you are interested in joining my All Heavens shop? An expert probed, Lord Immortal Emperor, what are your requirements? All of you have personally witnessed the establishment of the All Heavens shop and are fated with it. Those among you who have reached the true immortal stage can join the All Heavens shop, Chu Bei said casually. What? True immortal stage is enough. The experts in the plaza were instantly tempted. Every Emperor-level faction had extremely high requirements for the first batch of people they recruited. They were usually quasi-immortal emperors. At this moment, an Emperor-level faction was placed in front of them. As long as one was at the true immortal stage, they could become a senior figure. Lord Immortal Emperor, I'm willing to join. Me too. The spectating experts expressed their opinions one after another, fighting to be first. From now on, Black Blood Island will be removed. Its name will only be the All Heavens shop. Chu Bei spoke again. His voice carried supreme emperor power and spread throughout the entire All Heavens chaotic domain. As his dignified voice fell, Chu Bei's gaze swept across the surrounding experts. Tomorrow, the All Heavens shop will wait for everyone. The matter here is settled. Follow Master on the road. Chu Bei came to the 3 unnamed disciples and looked at them one by one. Bu Xian raised his head and asked tentatively, Master, where are we going next? The Dark Demon Palace. Chu Bei smiled and patted Bu Xian's head. Upon hearing the location that Chu Bei mentioned, Bu Xian was first stunned and then asked uncertainly, Master, are you going to save my parents? After seeing Chu Bei nod, Bu Xian immediately kowtowed to Chu Bei and was extremely excited. Disciple thanks, Master. Chu Bei smiled knowingly. Colorful ripples rippled on the surface of his body, and he disappeared with Bu Xian, Bing Tong Tong, and little Long Huang. Chapter 640. 100 Flower Emperor State, Central Region. In the middle of a vast mountain range, an exceptionally majestic hall stood majestically. The hall was surrounded by clouds and mist, making it seem majestic. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that there was actually a layer of black mist on the surface of the hall. As the mist surged, it gave off a sinister and terrifying feeling. At this moment, there were groups of black-robed figures sweeping back and forth in every corner of this mountain range. It was as if there was an inescapable net. The person with the weakest aura was actually a powerhouse who had ignited their divine fire. This mountain range was where the Dark Demon Hall, one of the 3 supreme king-level forces of the 100-Flower Emperor state, was located. At this moment, there were close to 100 figures in the hall. Every one of them had an immortal aura circulating around their bodies. All of them were looking at the Jade Stone's projection of Chu Bei, killing their 2 great protectors with gloomy expressions. Hall Master, I'm afraid this guy isn't an immortal king anymore, right? Finally, a man broke the dead silence in the hall and couldn't help but ask, We've all misjudged. This is a quasi-immortal emperor. A black-robed elder sat at the head of the table. His gaze swept across everyone in the hall as he sighed. Hall Master, what should we do now? Someone asked. A quasi-immortal emperor is no longer someone we can deal with. Let's ask the Vice Hall Master and the others to come out of seclusion first, the black-robed elder said faintly. At the same time, in a sinister plaza of the Dark Demon Hall, the extremely miserable and painful cries of a man and a woman echoed. The Hall Master is about to come out of seclusion. We don't have time to waste with you. Tell us about the Source Heaven Stone, and we'll spare your lives. A sinister and cold voice rang out, filled with intense anger. In the sky above the vast plaza, stars floated and black rivers surged. Black stone pillars that were hundreds of thousands of feet tall towered into the sky. Each stone pillar was covered with strange emperor runes. Pitch-black chains extended from the stone pillars, intersecting and outlining the central region of the plaza. At the end of the chains, a man and a woman were bound. Their expressions were extremely painful, and their bodies were almost transparent. On the surface of their bodies, there were 4 black chains wrapped around their limbs like vines, causing them to be unable to move. At the same time, they could vaguely see a dark aura on the chains that was constantly nibbling away at their souls and bodies. Bu Xian, that little fellow, will be brought back soon. At that time, let's see if you can bear to watch him die. In front of the man and woman, a true immortal had an extremely gloomy expression. Xian. No, impossible. Hearing the true immortal's words, panic surged in the bound woman's eyes. However, as soon as she finished speaking, her expression abruptly changed. This was because in her perception, the flesh and bone that she had planted an imprint on had really appeared and was getting closer and closer to her. Father, mother. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang in their ears. Xian. The woman turned her head and looked around with an anxious expression on her face. Not only her, but the man beside her also became nervous. Although they were not afraid of death, they still had a weakness, and this weakness was their children. If their child was really captured, they weren't sure if they could keep the news about the Source Heaven Stone. Not long after, the figure that they had missed for a long time appeared in their line of sight. In an instant, tears welled up in the couple's dry eyes. Don't hurt my child. The woman raised her head and looked at the sky. Her gaze shifted from Bu Xian to Chu Bei as she screamed. Mother, he's my master, Bu Xian hurriedly said when he heard the woman's shout. Master? Isn't he from the Dark Demon Hall? Hearing Bu Xian's words, the woman realized that she had made a mistake. When she looked at Chu Bei again, there was some guilt in her eyes. Bu Xian, you little fellow, you actually walked right into the trap. Seeing Chu Bei and his disciple, the true immortal was first stunned, then he laughed loudly. Father, mother, I've brought my master to save you. Seeing the man and woman in pain, Bu Xian's eyes also reddened. Men, seize Bu Xian. The true immortal glanced at Chu Bei, then coldly snorted at his subordinates behind him. In the next moment, several divine rainbows flew toward Chu Bei, heading straight for Bu Xian. Bang, bang, bang. However, before these supremes could get within 10 meters of Chu Bei, they seemed to be squeezed by an invisible force. Their bodies and souls swelled and exploded. Chu Bei didn't even look at the true immortal from the Dark Demon Hall. His gaze shot toward the pitch-black chains that bound the man and woman. In an instant, the pitch-black chains turned into nothingness. Thank you for saving us, benefactor. After regaining their freedom, the man and woman looked at Chu Bei in shock. When they came back to their senses, they cupped their fists at Chu Bei with gratitude. Then, They quickly flew to Buxian and hugged him tightly. Who are you?" Looking at the group of subordinates who died without any warning, the true immortal's pupils suddenly shrank. Fortunately, he had always been cautious and didn't personally make a move just now. "You don't have the right to know who I am." Chu Bei tilted his head and looked at the true immortal, his voice indifferent. "No matter who you are, since you came to my dark demon hall today, you must." Meeting Chu Bei's gaze, the true immortal from the dark demon hall didn't even have time to finish his words before his body and soul exploded. He didn't even have time to scream. "I didn't expect you to dare appear here." Soon, several figures appeared. There were more than 100 of them. They were the group of people who were in the hall earlier. Perhaps it was because they had seen the scene that Ghostfire sent back before he died, but none of the 100 figures, including the hall master, made a move. There was even some fear in their eyes. "You still want to send people to kill me?" Chu Bei put his hands behind his back and looked at the 100 figures in front of him mockingly. Just as Chu Bei finished speaking, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from one of the halls in the distance. Then, a thick black fog surged out of the hall. Within the black fog, an old, skinny, skeleton-like figure with a sinister emperor's aura slowly hovered in the sky. As the black fog surged, one could vaguely see that the old man's face was extremely withered. His eyes were sunken, and 2 balls of ghostly fire danced in his eye sockets. There was a strange look about him. "That's great. The deputy hall master has come out of seclusion." When they saw the old figure, the 100 figures instantly became excited. "Is that him? His aura is really strange." The old figure walked over and glanced indifferently at Chu Bei. Countless stars circled around him as if he was a small world. A hoarse voice came from his mouth, making one's hair stand on end. "You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.